Now stop acting like a martyr, Dad. My son's text flashed at 4:30 p.m. on Easter, 8 hours after I'd set 15 plates for a ghost town. We're busy on vacation. Just choke on your leftovers and enjoy your solitude. I stared at the overflowing table rotting in the silence. After a lifetime of sacrifice, they treated me like a broken ATM rather than a human being. Little do they know, when an engineer decides to demolish a structural failure, there is no mercy left for the traitors. This story starts quietly, but it won't leave you unchanged. Before we dive in, drop a quick comment and tell me, is it morning, afternoon, or late night where you are? I read your comments more than you think. Thank you for sharing. Quick note, some details have been adapted for storytelling purposes. The message is what I hope stays with you. The text from my son arrived at 4:30 p.m. on Easter Sunday, 8 hours after I'd set 15 plates that would never be used. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the screen. Wayne Mercer, 40 years old, and wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly grocery budget, appeared only as a name above 3 sentences that landed like fists. We're on vacation. Don't be so dramatic, Dad. We'll call it Christmas. Dramatic. Scout lifted his graying muzzle from my feet. My 12-year-old golden retriever, the only family member who'd shown up for Easter in 4 years. He wore Eleanor's old collar, the brass nameplate worn smooth by time and grief. The words sat in my chest like swallowed glass. Dramatic. I set the phone face down and looked at the dining room table beyond the kitchen doorway. 15 empty place settings stared back. White plates on white cloth. Eleanor's good silverware catching the afternoon light. Dramatic, he'd called me, for missing my family on Easter. Let me tell you what dramatic actually looks like. At 5 o'clock that morning, 5 hours before sunrise, 11 hours before Wayne's text, I'd begun Eleanor's ritual. At 68, my hands moved through the kitchen like a man performing a sacred duty. These were engineers' hands that had drafted bridges across 3 decades at Henderson Engineering Group, hands that had held my wife through her final breath 4 Aprils ago. Now they boiled 18 eggs for deviled eggs nobody would eat. Eleanor Garrett had died at 64, claimed by pancreatic cancer that moved through her like wildfire through dry grass. But her presence lived on in the velvet box holding her wedding ring. The piano draped in cloth in the living room, and the recipe card taped inside the cabinet above the stove. Paprika, Dijon mustard, pickle relish. The secret was in the proportions 1/4 teaspoon of each per 6 eggs. She'd made them every Easter for 40 years. I still made them her way. Every year. The 7-kilogram ham went into the oven at 5:47 a.m. Yellow tulips, her favorite, stood in the crystal vase she'd received as a wedding gift in 1978. The white embroidered tablecloth she'd made by hand in 1983 covered the dining table. The radio played hymns. Christ the Lord is risen today. He is not here, for he is risen. By 8 o'clock, I'd set 15 places. 3 children, 3 spouses, 7 grandchildren. Each plate positioned exactly as Eleanor had taught me, fork on the left knife and spoon on the right. Napkin folded into a triangle. The kitchen clock read 8:47 a.m. No one had arrived. At 9:15 a.m. Wayne's first text came through. Running late. Might not make it. At 10:08 a.m. Colleen Mercer, 38. My daughter, polished in the way only commission-based desperation can achieve, sent her excuse. Kids' egg hunt ran over at the club, won't make it. Sorry, Dad. Colleen hadn't been sorry about anything in 3 months. Not since she'd forged my signature on documents I wouldn't discover until June. Ronan Garrett, my youngest at 34, sent nothing. He was passed out in his truck at a rest stop 40 miles west, running from responsibility, the way he'd been running for 16 years. I'd find out about that location later from the sheriff who'd knocked on his window at 2 p.m. to check if he was breathing. At noon exactly, I sent a group text to all 12 of them. Missing you all today. Happy Easter. 12 red receipts appeared within 90 seconds. 12 people saw my message. 0 replied. Eleanor used to say the deviled eggs weren't for eating, they were for counting who loved you enough to show up. I counted 1. Scout pressed his weight against my leg under the table. At 12:15 p.m., I ate 1 deviled egg. The paprika tasted like dust. I pushed the ham aside 7 kilograms of meat that would spoil before I could finish it alone. I drank 1 glass of Eleanor's lemonade recipe, the one with fresh mint from the garden she'd planted in 1991. Then I looked at the 14 other plates. One by one, I turned them face down. A quiet ritual of acknowledgement. 14 plates. 14 people who'd chosen not to come. The sound of porcelain on cloth was the only noise in the house besides Scout's breathing and the kitchen clock ticking past 1 o'clock, then 2, then 3. At 4:30 p.m., Wayne's vacation text arrived. Don't be so dramatic, Dad. I stared at those 4 words until they stopped looking like language and started looking like evidence. Something shifted behind my ribs. Not breaking that had happened 4 years ago when Eleanor died, and I'd realized I was standing at her funeral surrounded by 3 children who'd spent the service checking their phones. This was different. This was the click of tumblers falling into place, the cold awareness of an engineer studying a failed structure and understanding exactly where the weight had been distributed wrong. I set the phone face down on the table. Scout followed me to Eleanor's walnut desk in the study. I opened the bottom drawer. Inside a notepad with banking app login credentials in my handwriting. Investment statements, legal documents in a folder labeled Tulip Phase 2. My lawyer's business card. A USB drive. They were on vacation in Cabo. Wayne's Instagram story that morning had shown him on a resort balcony, champagne glass raised to the camera, Adrian beside him in designer sunglasses. The resort cost $4,000 per night. Wayne worked in compliance at a mid-tier firm making $72,000 a year. I deposited $9,000 into his account 6 weeks ago. Emergency car repairs, he'd said. Colleen's country club membership cost $18,000 annually. She sold 2 houses last year on commission. Total earned $31,000 before taxes. I'd covered her mortgage twice in 4 months. Ronan hadn't worked in 8 months. I'd been sending him $1,200 monthly, rent, he'd said, groceries, just until he got back on his feet. The safety net had become the piggy bank. I closed the drawer without touching anything inside. Not yet. That's when I stopped being their father. That's when I became their problem. I turned the phone face down and walked to Eleanor's desk. The bottom drawer held more than old tax returns. It held the architecture of everything I'd built in 45 years. They thought I was just a lonely old man with a checkbook. They had no idea what an engineer could do with the right blueprint. How long does it take to decide to destroy your own daughter? 5 minutes or 50 years? I sat at Eleanor's desk at 11 o'clock that Easter night, the house silent except for Scout's breathing from his bed in the corner. The tulip folder lay closed in front of me. I hadn't opened it yet. First, I needed to see the numbers. My phone glowed in the darkness. Banking app. Authorized user account, the one I'd set up years ago so my children could help with emergencies. The balance read negative $82,500. $82,000. I scrolled through 12 months of transactions. Wayne, $9,000 for car repairs in February. Colleen, $6,000 for real estate license renewal in August. Ronan, $1,200 monthly since June, $14,400 total. Wayne again, $4,000 for Cabo Resort deposit last week. Colleen, $18,000 for country club membership dues. The safety net had become the piggy bank. I set the phone down and pulled Eleanor's wedding ring from the velvet box in the drawer. White gold worn thin on one side where she'd twisted it when she was nervous. I'd kept it here in her desk because wearing it felt like lying about her still being here. You warned me, I whispered to her photograph on the desk. You said I was making it too easy. Eleanor had died 4 years ago, telling me to stop writing checks every time the kids asked. Stop being the solution to every problem they created. Let them fall once so they could learn to stand. I'd ignored her, and now here we were. I opened the tulip folder. The first page was dated January 15th, 2024. Vernon Whitfield's legal brief. Russell Kemp's forensic notes. Timeline charts. Contingency plans. I closed my eyes and the memory pulled me backward like ice water. 3 months earlier, Lake Shakopee, cold wind cutting across frozen water. The cabin smelled like coffee and old wood smoke. January 15th, 6 in the morning, dark outside except for the porch light casting long shadows across snow. Russell Kemp, 60 years old, and 8 years retired from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, sat across from me at the wooden table, his hands wrapped around a mug. We'd been fishing together every Saturday morning for 15 years. I told him about the strange withdrawal attempts I'd been seeing. He'd done more than listen. Your daughter tried to wire herself $45,000 using your signature, Russell said, sliding a printout across the table. Bank flagged it, asked for phone verification. She hung up. I stared at the document. Clifford Garrett's signature. Except it wasn't mine. The C looped wrong. The double T and Garrett bled together. FBI forensic analysis matched Colleen's handwriting. Russell continued. 97% confidence. She practiced it. Maybe 50 times before she tried the real thing. The cabin door opened. Vernon Whitfield stepped inside, stamping snow from his boots. 58 graying at the temples in the way that inspired client confidence. He'd been my private attorney for 12 years. The children had never met him. I'd kept that relationship separate. Eleanor's advice, after Wayne had asked to borrow money for a business venture that turned into a jet ski. Vernon set a leather briefcase on the table and pulled out files. "Steve, this is felony forgery," he said without preamble. Minnesota Statute 609.625. But if we move now, we tip our hand. She'll lawyer up, claim it was a misunderstanding, pay it back. Slap on the wrist. We need her to escalate, Russell said. Give her rope. I looked between them. What are you proposing? Vernon opened a file labeled Tulip Phase 1. Project Tulip stands for Tactical Undercover Legal Investigation Protocol. Russell's acronym, not mine. Here's the play. You fake Alzheimer's symptoms for 3 months. We document everything: doctor visits, pharmacy records, confused behavior. You bait her into attempting conservatorship fraud. When she files fraudulent medical documentation, Russell added, we spring the trap. Full FBI and SEC involvement. Wire fraud, elder abuse conspiracy. Federal charges she can't plea down. I touched Eleanor's wedding ring on my finger. Didn't speak. Clifford, Vernon said quietly. She forged your name to steal $45,000. That's not a mistake. That's premeditation. If I do this and fail, I said slowly, I lose everything. If I succeed, I lose my daughter. Then you already lost your daughter, Vernon replied. She forged your name. I looked out at the frozen lake. Eleanor would say I'm being vindictive. Eleanor told you to stop enabling them, Russell said. I was there, Thanksgiving 2019. She said it at your table. How do you choose between your daughter and your dignity when the answer costs you both? The wind rattled the cabin windows. I'd built this place with my own hands in 1987. 3-season log cabin, 2 bedrooms, stone fireplace. Eleanor and I had spent 30 summers here. The children had stopped coming after she died. Russell leaned forward, his voice deadly serious. Cliff, here's the risk you need to understand. If you slip once, if a judge believes you're actually declining, you could lose control for real. Conservatorship isn't reversible if the court thinks you need it. One mistake and you're betting 45 years of your life's work on your ability to lie convincingly. Silence. 5 minutes of it. maybe more. The coffee went cold in my cup. Outside, a branch cracked under snow weight and fell. I thought about Eleanor at 64, 3 weeks before she died, holding my hand in the hospice bed. Don't let them turn you into an ATM, Cliff. Don't let them forget what work means. I'd failed her then. I wouldn't fail her now. Teach me, I said. Russell nodded once. Teach you what? Teach me how to forget things convincingly. Vernon closed his briefcase. Then we're operational. Phase 1 starts Monday. The memory released me. I sat at Eleanor's desk, 11:47 p.m. on Easter Sunday. The tulip folder lay open. Vernon had given me a leather-bound journal, dated entries, tracking every fake symptom, every performance, every piece of evidence we'd collect. I turned to the first blank page of Phase 2. In my engineer's handwriting, precise and controlled, I wrote April 1st, 11:47 p.m. They didn't come. Phase 2 activates tomorrow. Eleanor, forgive me, I'm betting our life's work on my ability to lie. Eleanor, if you're watching, I hope you understand. I hope you forgive what I'm about to become. I closed the journal and looked at the calendar on the desk. 92 days until the trap would spring. June 30th, 2024. The day we'd planned to reveal everything. I'd spent 45 years building bridges that wouldn't fall. Now I'd spend 3 months building a lie that couldn't crack. The lie would have to wait until morning. First, I needed to count the cost. I started with March, the month my daughter claimed she couldn't afford her daughter's medicine. At 6 o'clock Easter Monday morning, I spread 12 months of bank statements across the kitchen table. March 2023 through March 2024. 43 pages. Coffee steaming in Eleanor's favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle I couldn't bring myself to throw away. Red pen, yellow legal pad, Scout lying at my feet, his breathing the only sound in the house. Your breakfast can wait, I told him. This is more important. 43 transactions marked emergency over 12 months. Time to see how many were real. I opened my laptop and pulled up a folder I'd been ignoring for weeks. Screenshots. Dozens of them. Silas Townsend Brent's 22-year-old son from his first marriage. My grandson by extension, if not by blood, had been forwarding them since February. I'd thought he was just sending family updates. Pictures of everyone doing well, staying connected. The first screenshot was dated March 16th, 2023. Instagram story from Colleen's account. Photo of her and Aria at a Napa Valley winery, expensive bottle of Cabernet on the table. Cheese board spread between them. Caption, girls' weekend. So needed this. March 16th. I pulled the bank statement for March. March 15th, withdrawal $2,200. Memo line in Colleen's handwriting, Aria's emergency prescription specialist required it. Insurance won't cover. I'd sent the money within an hour. My granddaughter needed medicine. What kind of grandfather hesitates? The kind who should have asked which specialist, which prescription, which insurance denial. I circled the withdrawal in red, drew a line to the screenshot, wrote the time difference, 24 hours. Silas's text from February floated in my memory. Thought you'd want to see what everyone's up to, Grandpa. He wasn't sending updates. He was sending evidence. I went through the rest methodically. June 3rd, 2023. Wayne needed $1,800 for car transmission repair. Emergency. June 5th. His Instagram showed him at a Scottsdale golf resort. Club membership had visible champagne glass raised. Caption, much needed guy time with the boys. June 8th. I'd asked him how the car was running. He'd replied, "Great, Dad. Thanks for saving me." September 12th. Ronan texted, needing $1,500 for a business emergency. Partnership falling through creditor threatening lawsuit, just need to bridge the gap. September 13th. His Facebook showed a new motorcycle parked in his driveway. Caption, sometimes you gotta treat yourself. I circled each pair. Red ink connecting withdrawal to post. The pattern was perfect. Within 48 hours every time, sometimes 24. Once, just 6 hours between my transfer and Wayne posting a first-class plane ticket to Cabo. By 7:30, I'd matched 41 of the 43 transactions. The other two had no social media evidence, but Silas's forwarded messages included screenshots of text conversations, Ronan bragging to someone named Derek about getting the old man to cover rent again. Colleen telling a friend named Beth that Dad's good for at least $2,000 a month if you frame it right. Frame it right. My daughter had said that. About me, to her friend. I stood up, walked to the window. Dawn breaking over the backyard. Eleanor's rose garden needed weeding. I'd been meaning to do it since March, kept putting it off because she'd always done it, and doing it myself felt like accepting she was gone. What's the market rate for a father's love? Apparently $51,000 over 12 months, paid in installments to liars who couldn't be bothered to show up for Easter. I sat back down, pulled the calculator from the drawer, added every withdrawal, checked it twice the way I'd check load calculations on a bridge design. Engineers don't trust the first answer. The number came out the same both times, $51,247. I wrote on the legal pad in block capitals, total exposure $51,247. Underneath, total expressions of love, 0. No birthday calls, no Christmas visits, except the one where Colleen had asked about estate planning. No checking how I was doing after Eleanor died. Just texts. Always texts. Always asking, never giving. Eleanor's voice came back to me. Thanksgiving 2019, 6 months before the cancer diagnosis. We'd been cleaning up after dinner. Wayne had just called asking for money to cover his mortgage because his bonus got delayed. I'd said yes immediately. Eleanor had set down the dish towel and looked at me with those eyes that saw through everything I tried to hide. "You love them enough to let them struggle, Vincent," she'd said. "They're strong enough. They just don't know it yet because you never let them fall." I'd argued they needed help. Family helps family. That's what fathers do. She'd touched my face. Fathers teach their children to stand. You're teaching them to kneel. I looked at her photograph on the mantel, taken at the cabin summer of 2018. Her smile still there, frozen in silver frame. "You were right," I whispered. "They never learned they were strong enough because I never let them fall." 9:30. I photographed every statement page, every red circle, the legal pad calculation. Transferred the images to the encrypted folder Vernon had set up, military-grade encryption, he'd said, the kind that takes government computers years to crack. I opened the Tulip Phase 2 checklist on my laptop. Step 1. Document financial pattern of exploitation. Status complete. Step 2. Identify ally network within family structure. I looked at Silas's screenshots again. Months of them. February, March, April. Always forwarded with the same casual message. "Thought you'd want to see what everyone's up to, Grandpa." A 22-year-old nursing student had been building a case for months. Question was whether he knew he was doing it. Whether he was helping me or testing me. Whether those screenshots were weapons or warnings. 43 emergencies. 43 lies. 100% accuracy. That's not desperation, that's a business model. Time to find out whose side my grandson was on. I pulled out my phone. Typed carefully. "Can we meet Thursday?" "Bring what else you have." Stared at it for 30 seconds. Hit send. 3 dots appeared immediately. He was typing. Then they stopped. Started again. Stopped again. Whatever he was about to say, he was choosing his words carefully. That told me more than any answer could. The typing dots stopped. Started. Stopped again. Then my phone buzzed at 11 o'clock. The screenshot that arrived at 11 showed me exactly when my daughter taught my granddaughter to hate me. No text from Silas. Just an image. I tapped to expand it. Instagram story. Posted Easter Sunday, 2 p.m. While I'd been sitting alone at my kitchen table turning 14 plates face down. The username at the top read at aria.townsend15. My granddaughter was 15 years old. The photo showed yellow tulips in a crystal vase. Eleanor's vase, the one I'd filled that morning at 5 a.m. White plates visible in the background. Deviled eggs arranged on Eleanor's serving platter. My kitchen, my table, my Easter. The caption, "Grandpa so extra with his deviled eggs, ha ha ha." I zoomed in, read it again. Extra, laughing emoji. Posted at 2 p.m. to 847 followers while I'd been eating one egg and drinking lemonade alone. A second text arrived from Silas. "Grandpa, you should see this. Posted yesterday while you were waiting for us." I scrolled down to the comments. 17 of them. Most from usernames I didn't recognize. Teenagers I'd never met laughing at an old man's loneliness. Then I saw it. Top comment. At Colleen.Mercer.Realtor. My daughter's real estate account. "Your grandpa is so dramatic, lol. Dramatic." The same word Wayne had texted me at 4:30 p.m. The word that had broken something in my chest and turned it into cold calculation. My daughter had used it first. In public. To mock me. To her daughter. I scrolled to Aria's reply, posted 9 minutes later. OMG, mom says grandpa is literally a walking ATM. 847 people had seen that. 847 strangers now knew that my daughter had taught my granddaughter that I was currency. Not a person. Not family. An ATM with feelings that didn't matter. Posted at 2:47 p.m. Easter Sunday. I'd been in the study by then, standing at Eleanor's desk, looking at the tulip folder, and trying to decide if I had the strength to go through with it. My phone buzzed 3 more times in rapid succession. Silas. I've been documenting this since October. I have 6 months of screenshots. Silas. She posts every lie mom tells you. Every emergency becomes a vacation photo. Silas. I'm ashamed to be her brother. I'm ashamed of what they've done to you. I sat down hard in the kitchen chair. Scout lifted his head from his bed, sensing something wrong. 6 months. October. That was when I'd sent Colleen $6,000 for Aria's private school tuition. Emergency payment, she'd said. School threatening to drop her mid-semester. I pulled up my laptop, opened the screenshot folder Silas had been sending. Scrolled back to October. Found it. October 18th, 2023. Aria's Instagram story. Photo at a resort pool in Palm Springs. Caption, fall break hitting different this year. October 16th, I'd wired the tuition money. 48 hours. I scrolled through the rest of Silas's messages. Screenshots from November, December, January, February, March. Every single one time-stamped. Every single one showing luxury while claiming poverty. What do you call it? When a mother teaches her daughter that grandfathers are currency. Not people just walking banks with feelings that don't matter. Another text from Silas. Last October, I overheard mom coaching Aria. She said, "When grandpa gives you birthday money, thank him, but don't mention the ski trip." My hands were shaking. Not from hurt this time. From something else. Strategic relief. Cold vindication. I had an ally. Not paid help like Vernon. Not old friendship like Russell. Blood family. Someone who saw what I saw. Someone young enough to understand Instagram and old enough to recognize fraud. A 22-year-old nursing student had been running an intelligence operation since October, and I hadn't known. I sat for 3 minutes before responding. Vernon's voice in my head from the January meeting at the cabin. Never write anything that looks vindictive if phones are ever subpoenaed. Only facts. Only gratitude. Save the anger for court. I typed slowly, deliberately. Thank you, son. This helps me understand the situation clearly. Deleted it. Too cold. Tried again. Thank you, son. This helps me understand the situation clearly. Sent it. Then immediately. Can we meet Thursday 2 p.m.? Bring what else you have. Coffee is on me. The response came within 30 seconds. Alright, Thursday 2 p.m. I'll bring everything: texts, recordings, screenshots. Recordings. I stopped breathing for a moment. He said recordings. Plural. Not screenshots. Audio evidence. Another message. Grandpa, I should have said something sooner. I was afraid you'd think I was being disloyal to Mom. Then, but you're my grandfather. You taught me what loyalty actually means. I stared at that last line. Tried to remember when I'd taught him anything. He'd been 7 when Eleanor died. I'd seen him maybe a dozen times since then. Always at family events Colleen had organized, always brief, always supervised. When had I taught him loyalty? Maybe by showing up. By being the one who kept calling, even when no one called back. By making deviled eggs every Easter, even when no one came. Recordings. My grandson said recordings. Not just screenshots, audio evidence of things I wasn't supposed to hear. I opened my laptop, pulled up the encrypted folder Vernon had set up. Created a new subfolder, Silas Evidence. Saved every screenshot he'd sent. Every text message. The Instagram posts. Then I opened the Tulip Phase 2 file. Found the section labeled Ally Network. Typed allies, confirmed one. Name Silas Townsend, age 22, nursing student. Relationship grandson via Colleen's marriage to Brent Townsend. Evidence provided 6-month social media documentation, systematic tracking since October 2023. Additional resources, recordings, nature, TBD, to be reviewed Thursday, April 4th. Reliability assessment high. Unsolicited evidence provision demonstrated long-term commitment to documentation, personal risk taken to expose own mother's fraud. I saved the file, closed the laptop, stared at Silas's last message on my phone. I'll bring everything: texts, recordings, screenshots. Recordings plural. Not one accidental capture. A systematic archive. My 22-year-old grandson in nursing school had been running an intelligence operation for half a year, and he'd done it alone. Without being asked. Without knowing if I'd ever use it. He'd done it because it was right. I typed one more message, Thursday. I'm grateful, Silas. More than you know. His response came immediately. See you then, Grandpa. We're going to fix this. I wasn't alone anymore. I looked at the calendar. Thursday was 3 days away. 72 hours until I'd know what else my grandson had captured. What conversations. What admissions. What proof. Thursday couldn't come fast enough, but first I had a lawyer to update and a timeline to adjust. I called Vernon Tuesday afternoon, updated him, adjusted the timeline. Thursday, at 2 o'clock, I sat in his 22nd floor office watching the river through floor-to-ceiling windows, waiting for him to tell me what else I didn't know about my own life. Vernon's office safe held the document that would erase my daughter from my will, signed 2 years before I knew she'd earned it. Close the door, Vernon said. I did. He walked past his mahogany desk and drew the blinds. Operational security, Russell called it. Making sure no one could see what came next. And Silas brought recordings this morning, I said, settling into one of the leather chairs. My daughter coaching her daughter to exploit me. 6 months of documentation. Vernon nodded. Good. We'll need those for pattern analysis. But first, your estate. He walked to the painting behind his desk. Swung it aside. Wall safe. Combination lock. 3 spins. Click. The door opened. Vernon pulled out a document 3 inches thick. Leather binding, gold lettering on the spine, last will and testament. He set it on the desk between us. May 12th, 2022, he said. 2 years ago, 3 months after Eleanor passed. I stared at the date, tried to remember that day. Couldn't. The months after Eleanor died had all blurred together into one long gray fog. You've been protecting your assets since Eleanor passed. Vernon continued, opening to a marked page. Entire estate restructured. $80 million transferred to an irrevocable charitable trust. Henderson Engineering stock $42 million placed in a separate trust for Clover Mercer, your 8-year-old granddaughter. Accessible when she turns 25. I looked at the signature at the bottom. My handwriting. May 12th, 2022. I don't remember signing this, I said. Vernon's expression softened. You were grieving. Eleanor had been gone 3 months. You came to my office, said she'd made you promise something 3 days before she died. The memory surfaced. Eleanor in hospice. Morphine making her words slow but her eyes sharp. Her hand gripping mine with strength she shouldn't have had. Don't let them waste what we built, she'd said. Promise me, Vincent. Don't let them turn 45 years into nothing. I'd promised. Eleanor signed that will with me 2 years ago, her hands already shaking from the cancer. She knew what was coming, not the forgery, not the theft, but the entitlement that would make them inevitable. Vernon flipped through pages. Wayne Mercer, Colleen Mercer, and Ronan Garrett are named in the will. Each receives $10,000 upon your death. Nothing more. They have no trustee status, no control over the grandchildren's funds, no access to the primary estate. They don't know this exists, I said. No, and they won't until probate. This will is ironclad. Even if they challenge, they lose. You already disinherited them legally 2 years ago. Vernon reached into the safe again, pulled out a USB drive and a clear evidence bag. FBI seal on the label. Forensic report confidential. I read. He plugged it into his laptop, turned the screen toward me. Bank document. The wire transfer from January. Colleen's signature attempting to authorize movement of funds from my account to hers, except it wasn't her signature. It was her handwriting trying to become mine. FBI handwriting analysis lab, Vernon said. They matched this to her Christmas card from December 2023, the one she sent you with Aria's school photo. Match probability, 99.7%. I zoomed in on the signature comparison. Saw where she'd practiced the C in Clifford, where she'd gotten the double T in Garrett almost right, but not quite. She'd practiced 50 times, Russell had said. Maybe more. Criminal forgery. Vernon continued. Federal wire fraud. The bank flagged it. Denise Caldwell filed a suspicious activity report. That triggered Russell's involvement. The demand letter, I said. When do we send it? Vernon closed the laptop. Monday, April 8th. Give her the weekend to feel safe. Then we detonate. Saturday morning, I met Russell at the lake, 6 o'clock. Cold enough that fog hung over the water like a blanket. The cabin at Lake Shakopee sat 40 miles west of Rochester, down a gravel road that turned to mud every spring. I'd built it with my own hands in 1987. Russell stood on the wooden dock with 2 fishing rods and a thermos of coffee that smelled like it had been brewing since 4 a.m. Your credit score, he said instead of hello, handing me a trifold document. Dropped from 820 in January 2023 to 450 last month. I unfolded the pages, saw my name at the top, saw the numbers. 7 credit cards, Russell continued. 2 personal loans, total exposure $310,000. All opened in your name over 14 months. All maxed out, all delinquent. I couldn't speak. You never opened any of these accounts, Russell said. It wasn't a question. No. We know. Your son-in-law did. Brent Townsend. Used your social security number via your daughter's forged power of attorney. Federal identity theft. The kind that gets you 10 years minimum. $310,000. Numbers on a page that would take me years to untangle. I cast my fishing line, watching it arc across the dawn water. Let it settle. Watched the ripples spread. 3 minutes of silence. Russell waited. He'd always been good at waiting. How do you put a price on justice? Is it worth $310,000 in stolen credit, or $80 million in protected inheritance, or 3 months of pretending your mind is gone? One favor, old friend, I finally said. Teach me how to forget things convincingly. Russell laughed, then realized I wasn't joking. Full Alzheimer's, he asked. You're talking about faking cognitive decline well enough to fool doctors. 3 months, I said. I need to bait her into conservatorship fraud. When she brings forged documents to court, we spring every trap at once. SEC, FBI, everything. Russell studied my face. You understand the risk if you slip once. I built bridges for 45 years, I interrupted. I can build one convincing lie for 90 days. He set down his rod, pulled a notebook from his tackle box, worn leather FBI seal embossed on the cover. Alzheimer's progression stages, he said, flipping pages. Early onset, middle, advanced. You'll need to master all 3 in reverse: start, subtle, escalate slowly. Memory lapses, repeated questions, confusion about time and place. He looked up from the water. And Cliff, once you start this performance, you can't break character. Not once. Not even when she's crying. I learned to break character Wednesday afternoon, 3 days after Russell's warning. How many lives does a son-in-law have to destroy before a father-in-law stops calling it a family matter? Wednesday, April 10th, 2 o'clock. Vernon's office. Russell Kemp arrived carrying an FBI-issued laptop and a manila folder marked Confidential SEC Investigation in red block letters. Vernon locked the door, closed the blinds. We sat at the conference table, 3 men in a room 22 floors above the river, about to learn that family drama was the least of our problems. Russell's expression was grim. Whatever he was about to show went beyond Colleen's forgery and Brent's identity theft. What I'm about to show you changes everything, Russell said, opening the laptop. This isn't just about your family anymore. Vernon leaned forward. SEC sent the file this morning. It's worse than we thought. Show me, I said. Russell connected the laptop to Vernon's projector. The wall lit up. SEC investigation file header. Case number. Date opened February 2024. Subject Brent Michael Townsend. Allegation operation of fraudulent investment scheme in violation of Securities Act of 1933. $4 million. Russell said, clicking to the next slide. 47 documented victims. Your son-in-law has been running a Ponzi scheme since 2021. The slide showed a pyramid structure. New investor money flowing in at the bottom. Old investors paid from the top. Brent's personal accounts skimming 30% off the middle. Classic Ponzi. The kind that collapsed the moment new money stopped flowing. He promised 12% annual returns. Vernon said, reading from his copy of the file. Used new investor funds to pay quarterly distributions to existing clients. Kept the difference for personal use. Russell advanced slides. Victim demographics. Primarily Midwest seniors. Ages 65 to 92. Average loss $85,000. Most recruited through church groups and community centers. My son-in-law wasn't just greedy. He was a predator. How the scheme started collapsing in March. Russell continued. He couldn't meet quarterly payment obligations. That's when people started asking questions. SEC opened the investigation 6 weeks ago. I stared at the numbers. $4 million. 47 families. Show me the victims, I said. Russell clicked through profiles, names, ages, loss amounts. Each one a person who'd trusted the wrong man. He stopped on slide 23. Margaret Sinclair, age 90, status widow. Amount lost $45,000. A photograph showed an elderly woman in a floral dress, white hair, gentle smile. The kind of grandmother who baked cookies and remembered birthdays. Margaret Sinclair. Russell said quietly. 90 years old. He took $45,000, everything she had. Life savings from her deceased husband's postal pension. 65 years of marriage. Gone. Where is she now? I asked. Russell's jaw tightened. Medicaid nursing home. She'd been in private care before Brent. Nice facility activities, real dignity. Now she's in a state home eating food she can't taste, sharing a room with 3 strangers. The slide showed a second photo. Younger woman, maybe mid-60s, sitting at a piano. Yellow tulips in a vase beside sheet music. Her daughter, Russell said. Faye Sinclair, 64, piano teacher at the community center. Widowed 6 years ago, she liquidated her own retirement account, trying to keep her mother in private care. Works 3 jobs now: morning lessons, afternoon community center classes, evening private students. 64 years old, and she'll be working until she dies because Brent Townsend stole her mother's nest egg. Margaret Sinclair spent 90 years building a life, 65 years married to a postal worker who saved every penny. And my son-in-law erased it all in 18 months with a handshake and a promise. Next slide, I said. Russell clicked. Financial flowchart. Red arrows traced money movement. I saw my name. Clifford Garrett Emergency Loans to Family Members 2022 to 2024. Total $51,247. Red arrows from my name to Colleen Mercer, to Wayne Mercer, to Ronan Garrett. Then arrows from all 3 converging on one name, Brent Townsend. Timestamps showed the transfers. Within 72 hours. Every time. My emergency loans deposited directly into accounts labeled Townsend Capital Management Operating Fund. Your money, Russell said, voice careful, kept his Ponzi running 6 extra months. The funds you sent to help family covered quarterly distribution shortfalls. Without your $51,000, the scheme would have collapsed in September 2023. Instead, it ran until March 2024. I stood, walked to the window, looked down at the river 22 floors below. I funded this, I said. I funded him stealing from 90-year-old widows. Vernon's voice came from behind me. You didn't know. Legally, you're a victim too. He defrauded you to defraud them. That doesn't change what happened, I said. Margaret Sinclair is in a Medicaid facility because I sent Colleen $6,000 for Aria's medicine. Faye Sinclair works 3 jobs because I believed Wayne needed car repairs. Silence. 90 seconds, maybe more. I turned back to face them. How many others are there like Margaret? I asked. Russell met my eyes. 46 more, some worse off. 47 victims. 47 families. I'd been so focused on my own betrayal, I hadn't counted the collateral damage. We don't just protect me, I said. We don't just recover my money. We take him down, all of him. Federal prison. Full restitution to every victim. I want 47 families to see justice. Russell nodded. Then we coordinate with SEC, full cooperation. I'll set the timeline with Agent Kellerman. How long? Vernon asked. Russell closed the laptop. If Clifford testifies, if we build the elder abuse angle, if the conservatorship fraud gives us leverage, 6 months to indictment, 12 to trial. He pulled out a second folder, thicker than the first. But if we're doing this, you need to see the conservatorship playbook. Your family doctor called Vernon this morning. He slid a business card across the table. Dr. Glenn Barton, neurologist, cognitive assessment specialist. Your daughter's already shopping for a corrupt medical assessment, Russell said. Dr. Barton's been suspended twice by the state medical board. He certifies dementia for a fee. 3,000 cash. He'll swear you can't remember your own name. I picked up the card, looked at the name. Then we give him a performance. I said, that's worth every penny. The performance would come later. First, I needed to know how deep the conspiracy ran. I called Dr. Meyer's office at 8 o'clock Friday morning. Not because I needed an appointment, but because I needed to know if the name on that business card had already gotten to him. The receptionist said Dr. Glenn Meyer could see me at 10:30. Emergency slot. I took it. Rochester Medical Center smelled like antiseptic and coffee. Dr. Meyer's office was on the 3rd floor, same practice he'd run for 23 years. I'd been his patient for 12 of them. He'd diagnosed Eleanor's cancer. Held my hand when I'd asked him if she had time to see Christmas. Told me the truth when I needed it. He met me at his office door, closed it behind us, and drew the blinds. "Sukicho, Clifford," he said, settling into his desk chair. "I'm violating about 6 protocols by telling you this, but Dr. Glenn Barton contacted me 3 weeks ago. Dr. Glenn Meyer was 56, graying at the temples, with the kind of steady hands that came from 30 years of medicine. He'd been my physician for 12 years. I trusted him the way I'd trusted Eleanor completely. What did he want? I asked. He asked me to pre-sign cognitive decline paperwork. For you. Before seeing you. Before any examination. Before any symptoms. I sat very still. She asked you to diagnose me with dementia before I showed symptoms. Dr. Meyer pulled a file from his desk drawer. Opened it. 3 printed emails. He didn't mention your daughter by name, but he said he had a family requesting expedited assessment for conservatorship proceedings. Offered me $2,000 cash to sign an incapacity declaration, dated for today's date. Said the patient you would never need to come in. What did you do? Oh, I documented everything. Reported him to the state medical board. They've had their eye on Barton for years. This is his 3rd complaint. But Clifford, here's what you need to understand. Step 1 of conservatorship fraud is always the same. Secure medical evidence before the target knows they're a target. He slid the emails across his desk. I read them. Clinical language. Professional tone. Utterly corrupt. You're not declining, Dr. Meyer continued. Your cognition is sharp. Your memory is intact. But someone is building a very convincing paper trail that says you are. If she gets a second opinion doctor to sign someone less ethical than me, you have 72 hours before an emergency conservatorship hearing. 3 weeks ago. That was mid-March. Before Easter. Before the dramatic text. Before I'd even opened the tulip folder. Colleen had been planning medical fraud while I was still making deviled eggs and hoping she'd show up. Can I have copies? I asked. Dr. Meyer handed me a manila envelope. Already made them. And Clifford, be careful. Whoever's coaching your daughter knows exactly what they're doing. How long does it take for a parent to stop recognizing their child? Not their face, their soul. Monday afternoon, Denise Caldwell called my cell phone at 2 o'clock. Mr. Garrett, this is Denise from First National. I need you to come in, today if possible. There's something you need to hear. Denise Caldwell had been branch manager at First National Bank for 8 years, the kind of professional who remembered customer birthdays and spotted fraud patterns that algorithms missed. She'd handled Eleanor's estate paperwork after she died, sent a handwritten condolence card. I arrived at 2:15. Her office was small, organized, glass-walled, overlooking the main floor. She closed the door, drew the interior blinds. Our compliance team flagged a suspicious call from January 22nd, she said, sitting across from me. 3 months ago. The investigation just cleared legal review this morning. I need you to listen to something. She opened her laptop, pulled up an audio file. This is a recording from January 22nd. A caller requested a wire transfer of $15,000 to Townsend Consulting, LLC. account ending in 7739. The caller identified as you. She clicked play. 30 seconds of audio. Female voice, slightly lowered pitch, trying to sound masculine. Yes, this is Clifford Garrett. I need to authorize a wire transfer for $15,000 to Townsend Consulting, LLC. Account ending in 7739. For contractor services. I stopped breathing. "And that's my daughter's voice," I said. Denise nodded. "I know. She answered your security questions perfectly. Mother's maiden name, Henderson. First car, 1967 Ford Mustang. Street you grew up on, Oakdale Avenue. She had all of it. Eleanor's maiden name. The Mustang I'd bought at 19. The street where I'd lived until I was 12. Colleen had weaponized my entire history. Bank policy requires voice authentication for wire transfers over 10,000. Denise continued. The system flagged the call for review because the voice pattern didn't match your previous authentication samples. But by the time compliance caught it, we'd already stopped the transfer. She never got the money. January 22nd, I said. That was 11 days after she was added as an authorized user on your accounts. Denise finished. I pulled the paperwork. January 11th, you signed the authorization in branch. She said it was for emergencies. 9 weeks before Easter. 2 months before the dramatic text. 11 days before her first attempt to steal $15,000 using my voice. The wire destination, I said. Townsend Consulting. Stay Brent Townsend's LLC. We cross-referenced with the SEC investigation that came through last week. That account was flagged as part of his Ponzi operating structure. That was my daughter's voice, stealing from me, to fund a Ponzi scheme, using my dead wife's maiden name as the security answer. I need to remove her access, I said. Immediately. Denise was already pulling up forms. All authorized users, Colleen Wayne and Brent, all of them. 18 minutes. That's how long it took to remove 3 people from accounts I'd added them to because I'd trusted them with emergencies. Denise printed documentation, handed me a certified copy of the audio file on a thumb drive. We're filing a suspicious activity report with FinCEN retroactively, she said. And Mr. Garrett, I'm sorry. I know this is your family. "Noka," I said, standing. "This is evidence." She reached for a second folder on her desk, thicker than the first. Slid it across to me. "Mr. Garrett, there are 4 more flagged transactions. Your daughter attempted this 5 times. She succeeded on 3. Vernon sent the demand letter at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, April 16th, and I turned off my phone before the first call could come through. I did not want to hear Colleen's voice. I did not want to hear the justifications, the accusations, the tears that would pivot to rage the moment I failed to capitulate. Vernon had drafted 12 pages itemizing every fraudulent transaction. The authorized user drains the forged wire transfers, the identity theft loans, the Ponzi scheme she had fed with my money. The total was $45,247. The letter gave her 72 hours to respond. He sent it certified mail signature required. She would have it by Thursday morning at the latest. I turned the phone back on Wednesday morning at 9:45. 22 missed calls, 12 voicemails. The first was Brent, barely intelligible through the slurring. The second was a number I did not recognize. The third was Colleen, her voice so calm it made my chest tighten. "Dad, I don't know what Vernon told you, but we need to talk before this gets out of hand. Please call me back." The fourth was Ronan. He sounded confused, asking if I was okay, saying his mom told him I was sick. The seventh was Brent again, screaming about lawsuits and elder abuse and how I had weaponized a stranger against my own family. The ninth was Wayne. "Cliff, it's Wayne. Listen, I know there's been some confusion, Colleen's upset, and I think maybe some wires got crossed. Give me a call when you can. Let's talk this through, okay? No lawyers. Just family. His tone was measured, reasonable. The voice of a man who made his living negotiating contracts and soothing anxious clients. It set my teeth on edge. The 12th was a woman I had never heard before. Her voice was clipped, professional, brittle at the edges. Mr. Garrett, this is Adrienne Mercer. I'm Wayne's wife. We've never met. I'm a private wealth manager here in Scottsdale, and I just want you to know that Wayne and I had no knowledge of what Colleen was doing. None. We're horrified. Please don't lump us in with her. We're on your side. She was 39 according to the background check Russell had run the day before. She managed a portfolio worth $60 million for high net worth clients, most of them in real estate development. She had been married to Wayne for 11 years, and according to the same report, she had co-signed for a home equity line of credit on their house in March, 1 month after Colleen's Ponzi scheme collapsed. The credit line was for $200,000. I deleted all 12 voicemails and called Wayne at exactly 10 a.m. He answered on the first ring. Cliff, thank God. Listen, I got your message, I said. Yeah, okay. Look, Colleen's a mess right now, and I think she's not thinking straight. But this whole demand letter thing, Cliff, it's going to destroy her. You know that, right? The kids are going to see this. Ronan's already asking questions. She destroyed herself. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, recalibrating. I get that you're angry. I do. But we're talking about your daughter, your grandkids. If you push this, if you actually take her to court, it's going to blow up the whole family. There won't be any coming back from it. The family blew up the moment she stole from me. She didn't steal, she borrowed. There's a difference. I closed my eyes. This was the script I had expected. The minimization, the reframing, the plea for mercy disguised as practicality. Did you borrow anything, Wayne? Another pause. Longer this time. What? March 9th. You called me. You said you needed $3,200 for car repairs. You said the transmission was shot, and Adrienne's Mercedes was undrivable. I sent you a check the same day. Did you borrow that money? Silence. Because Russell pulled your credit card statements. You and Adrienne were in Scottsdale that weekend. You played 36 holes at True North. You had dinner at Bourbon Steak. The Mercedes was never in the shop. And Cliff, look, I can explain. Did you lie to me? It's not that simple. Yes or no? You're being reductive. I said. I'm being specific. I hung up. Russell was sitting across from me at the kitchen table, his laptop open, his face unreadable. He had listened to the entire call on speaker. He did not say anything for a long moment. Scout was lying at his feet, her head on her paws, watching us both. Then Russell turned the laptop toward me. There were 6 tabs open in his browser. The first was titled Colleen Mercer Financial Timeline. The second was Brent Schaefer Identity Theft Evidence. The third was Dr. Glenn Barton Disciplinary History. The 6th tab, the one Russell was pointing to, was labeled Wayne Mercer Compliance Violations. What is this? I asked. Russell's expression did not change. Wayne's not afraid of you, Clifford. He's afraid of her. And when someone like Wayne is that afraid, it means she has leverage. The question is, what kind? He clicked the tab open. The first document was a screenshot of an email dated February 4th. The subject line read, R.E. Undisclosed Conflict of Interest, Maricopa County Zoning Board. I stared at the screen. My pulse was too loud in my ears. Keep reading, Russell said quietly. I did. The community center smelled like rosin and old wood, nothing like the lawyer's office I had left 2 hours before. I had spent Wednesday afternoon reading Wayne's compliance file with Vernon, cataloging every undisclosed conflict. every zoned property his firm had appraised, while he sat on the county board. Russell had built a timeline spanning 4 years. It was airtight. It was also leverage Colleen had been sitting on since February, which explained why Wayne had lied about the Mercedes, why his voice on the phone had carried that edge of panic. But I did not want to think about Wayne or Colleen or Russell's methodical destruction of my family tree. I wanted to do something that had nothing to do with any of them. So I walked into the Rochester Community Arts Center at 3:55 p.m. on Thursday and asked the woman at the front desk where I could find the adult piano instructor. She pointed down the hall. Studio 3. Faye's expecting someone at 4. The studio was small, maybe 15 by 20, with 2 upright pianos against opposite walls and a single window overlooking the parking lot. Faye Sinclair was sitting at the far piano, her back to the door, playing something I did not recognize. Her hands moved carefully, deliberately, like someone solving a puzzle. She finished the phrase and turned. "Mr. Garrett," I nodded. "Clifford." She stood and crossed the room, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, her fingers calloused at the tips. She was 64, her hair silver and pulled back in a loose bun, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a cardigan over a simple blouse, and there was a stillness about her that reminded me of Eleanor in the mornings, before the day had made its demands. "You called yesterday," she said. "You said you wanted to learn one piece." "Moonlight Sonata." She studied me for a moment, and I had the sudden impression that she was reading something in my face I had not intended to show. Then she gestured to the piano by the window. "Sit." I sat. The bench was worn smooth, the wood warm under my palms. I had not touched a piano since Eleanor's funeral. The church had one in the fellowship hall, and I had rested my hand on the lid while people filed past offering condolences I could not hear. I had not thought about it since. "What brings you here?" Faye asked. She sat beside me close enough that I could smell lavender and something faintly medicinal like menthol. "My wife played this piece for 40 years, I said. "Every morning. I never learned. I want to play it once for her. Not to be good, just to hear it from my own hands." "Can you teach me just that?" Faye's expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or calculation. She glanced at my hands, then back at my face. "I can," she said. 18 months. "You patient," I nodded. "Good. Most people want results in 6 weeks. This isn't 6 weeks." She reached across me and played the opening notes, slow and deliberate, each one hanging in the air like a question. "You know the piece. I heard it every day for 4 decades. Hearing and playing are different animals. You'll need to learn to read music. You'll need to build strength in your fingers. You'll need to stop thinking like an engineer and start thinking like—" She paused, her fingers still resting on the keys. "You are an engineer, aren't you?" "I was. Structural." She smiled, faint and brief. "That'll help, actually. You'll understand the architecture. Most students hear music as sound. You'll hear it as framework. That's useful. Learning piano at 68 was like building a bridge backward to a woman who no longer needed crossing." But I nodded anyway. Faye opened a folder on top of the piano and pulled out a beginner's exercise book. "We'll start with scales. C major. Your right hand first, then your left, then together. Once you can do that without looking, we'll move to reading. Once you can read, we'll start the sonata. Slowly. Very slowly. When do we start?" "Now." She placed my right hand on the keys, adjusting my thumb to middle C, curving my fingers until they hovered just above the white keys. Her touch was clinical, impersonal, but not unkind. "Play." I pressed the first note. It sounded thin, hesitant. "Again, firmer." I played it again. Then the next. then the next. By the time I reached the octave, my hand was shaking. Good, Hunfei said. Now the left. We worked for 45 minutes. She corrected my posture, my hand position, the pressure I applied to each key. She did not offer praise, but she did not criticize either. She simply guided, adjusted, repeated. When the lesson ended, my fingers ached in a way I had not felt since my last job site, and I realized I had not thought about Colleen or Brent or Wayne once since sitting down. Faye walked me to the door. Next Thursday, she said. 4 o'clock. Practice 15 minutes a day, no more. You're building muscle memory, not speed. I nodded. Then almost as an afterthought, she added, your hands. Engineer's hands. You'll understand structure faster than most. I looked down at my palms, at the lines etched deep from 60 years of use, at the slight tremor in my right index finger I had been ignoring for months. For the first time in 4 years, my hands were not empty. They were waiting. Thank you, I said. Faye watched me walk to my car. I did not see her return to the studio or pull out her lesson planner or write in the margin beside my name, C. Garrett Moonlight. 18 months. Note, daughter is the one who funded the theft from mom. He doesn't know I know. I did not see her open her phone to the photo Russell had sent her last week, Margaret Sinclair in the nursing home, the $45,000 loss circled in red on the victim spreadsheet. I did not know that Faye knew exactly whose daughter had stolen her mother's money. She was teaching me anyway. Colleen's car pulled into my driveway at 3 p.m. on Sunday, 4 months since her last visit, 3 days after the demand letter. I had been practicing scales on the kitchen table, my fingers tapping the pattern Faye had taught me, and the sound of gravel under tires made me stop mid-measure. I stood at the window and watched her get out of the car. She was carrying a bakery box. Her face was composed, pleasant, the mask of a daughter checking on her elderly father. I had been expecting this. Vernon had installed the cameras on Friday. 4 of them hidden in smoke detectors and picture frames covering the kitchen, living room, and front hallway. Every angle. Every word. I did not need to do anything except follow the script Russell had written for me. I opened the door before she could knock. Aria, I said, smiling. Honey, I didn't know you were coming. Colleen's expression flickered just for a second before settling back into concern. Dad, it's Colleen, not Aria. I blinked as if trying to place the name. Right, Colleen, of course. Come in, come in. She stepped inside and set the bakery box on the counter. Lemon bars, the kind Eleanor used to make. The gesture was calculated, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. She was here to perform too. I brought these for you, she said. I know you like them. That's sweet. Thank you. I moved toward the coffee maker, my movements slow, deliberate. You want coffee? Sure, Dad. That'd be great. I filled the pot, measured the grounds, pressed the button. Then I stood there, staring at the machine as it hissed and dripped, as if I had forgotten what came next. Colleen watched me from across the room. I could feel her cataloging every hesitation. You okay? I turned, startled. What? The coffee. It's almost done. Oh, right. I opened the cupboard and pulled out 2 mugs, then paused. Reached for a cereal bowl instead. Poured the coffee into it, the dark liquid pooling in the curved porcelain steam rising. I set it on the counter in front of her. Colleen stared at it. Dad, that's a bowl. I looked down, confusion painted across my face. What? You poured coffee into a bowl. I frowned, picked up the bowl, tilted it slightly, as if examining it for the first time. Huh. I thought... I trailed off, set it down, reached for a mug. My hand trembled just enough to be visible. Sorry, I'm a little tired today. It's okay. Her voice was soft, gentle, the tone you use with children and the dying. Why don't you sit down? I'll finish the coffee. I sat at the kitchen table and watched her move through my kitchen, like she belonged there. She poured 2 mugs, brought one to me, sat across from me with the other. She was scanning the room. I saw her eyes linger on the dish rack, the calendar on the wall, the stack of mail by the phone. She was looking for evidence, signs of decline, proof. Acting like a fool for your daughter's benefit is a special kind of hell that only becomes bearable when you remember she's filming evidence for fraud. So, she said, her voice bright, conversational. How have you been? It's been a while. Good. Busy with... I paused, my gaze drifting to the window. When are we doing Thanksgiving again? Colleen's smile tightened. Dad, Thanksgiving was 5 months ago. We had it at my house, remember? I looked at her, blinking. Right. November. Wait, when's Thanksgiving? November every year. November. I repeated, nodding slowly. Then I took a sip of coffee and said nothing. Colleen excused herself to use the bathroom. I watched her reflection in the window as she stopped in the hallway, pulled out her phone, and angled it toward the kitchen. She was FaceTiming someone. I could see the screen glow, the tiny rectangle of Brent's face on the other end. She whispered something I could not hear, then turned the phone slightly, showing him the coffee bowl still sitting on the counter. He just poured coffee into a cereal bowl. She said, her voice low but audible in the quiet house. He called me Aria twice. This is real. Brent's voice crackled through the speaker, too faint to make out. Colleen nodded, said something else, then ended the call and returned to the table. We talked for another 40 minutes. She asked about my week. I repeated myself 3 times. She asked if I was eating enough. I told her Eleanor had made pot roast last night, which was impossible because Eleanor had been dead for 4 years. Colleen's face remained calm, sympathetic, but I saw the gleam in her eyes. She was getting what she came for. When she finally stood to leave, she hugged me at the door. I love you, Dad. I'll check on you again soon, okay? Okay, honey, drive safe. She walked to her car, and I watched through the window as she pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. I stood there for a full minute, letting the performance drain out of me. Then I walked back to the kitchen. The coffee bowl was gone. So was the mug she had used. I opened the dishwasher. Both were inside, rinsed clean. My phone buzzed. A text from Silas. Intercepted from Aria's phone 10 minutes ago. Colleen to Brent. He's worse than we thought. Harrison tomorrow, SM. I stared at the screen. Harrison. Dr. Nathan Harrison, the neurologist Colleen had recruited after Dr. Meyer refused to sign a false incapacity declaration. A home visit scheduled for tomorrow to diagnose me with cognitive decline based on today's performance. I just convinced my daughter I was losing my mind. She believed it. Mission accomplished. Another text came through, this one from Vernon. Got clear audio and video. But Clifford, she wiped down the coffee cup and bowl before leaving. She's collecting evidence and eliminating her fingerprints. She's done this before. Then Russell's reply appeared immediately beneath it. Checking her employment history. This feels practiced. Russell installed the 6th Ring camera at 2 p.m. on Monday, 12 hours before the first threat arrived. He had spent Sunday night running Colleen's employment history and found 3 prior employers who would not provide references, which told him everything he needed to know. But that was not why he was at my house mounting motion sensor floodlights above the garage. He was here because Brent was cornered, and cornered men do not negotiate. Russell Garrett was 45, my son from my first marriage, and an active FBI agent who had been coordinating what he called Project Tulip since January. He stood on the ladder, his hands steady as he adjusted the camera angle. His voice calm in the way only federal law enforcement can manage when discussing imminent violence. Demand letter frozen cards? Ponzi collapsing? He said. Brent's backed into a corner. Cornered men don't negotiate, they escalate. Get cameras up today. I handed him the mounting bracket. You think he'll come here? I think he'll send someone. Russell climbed down, tested the motion sensor with his hand. The floodlight blazed white across the driveway. You need to consider the cabin. I'm not leaving my house. But then keep Scout by the door and pack an overnight bag, just in case. I did. That night, I set the bag by the front hallway, checked the camera feeds on my phone, and let Scout sleep at the foot of the bed instead of in the kitchen. He knew something was wrong. Dogs always do. The motion alert came at 2:47 a.m. on Tuesday. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen glowing with a grainy infrared image of my driveway. A man, mid-30s, stocky build, dark jacket. He approached from the street, paused at the edge of the motion sensor's range, and stood there for 30 seconds. Just stood, watching the house. Then he turned and walked away. Scout growled low in his chest. I whispered, "Good boy. You heard him too, didn't you?" I sent the footage to Russell at 2:50 a.m. By 8:30 a.m. he had a name. Ran the face. Russell texted. Marcus Dillon, 34, 2 assault charges, works cash-only security. Brent hired muscle. You need to consider the cabin. Marcus Dillon. The name sat heavy in my chest. This was not a son-in-law making poor financial decisions. This was a man with a criminal record sent to my driveway in the middle of the night to test my defenses, to see if I had cameras to map the approach for whatever came next. Brent was not just escalating. He was preparing. What's the market rate for a father's peace of mind, 6-ring cameras, and a loaded overnight bag? I did not go to the cabin. I stayed. I waited. And on Wednesday at 9 p.m., 3 days after Colleen's performance in my kitchen, Wayne showed up. He did not call first. He just pulled into the driveway, knocked twice, and stood at my door in a dress shirt and slacks with no tie, his face blotchy and red. When I opened the door, he stepped inside and said, "Dad, I need to talk to you." I led him to the kitchen. He sat at the table, his hands shaking, and for a long moment, he just stared at the wood grain like it held answers. Then he started crying. 2 years ago, he said, his voice thick. Online poker. I was down $180,000. Adrienne didn't know. I couldn't tell her. Brent offered to help. I thought he was loaning me money. I sat across from him and said nothing. Waiting. He recorded everything, Wayne continued. Made it look like I was part of the Ponzi, like I was recruiting investors through my compliance network. He has video of me taking cash from him at a Starbucks. If anyone sees that footage, I look like a co-conspirator. Are you? No. His voice cracked. I swear to God, no. I didn't know about the Ponzi until you told me. But Brent, he's been holding this over me since the debt. Every time you took action, the will meeting, the bank visit, the demand letter, I had to tell him. He said if I didn't, he'd send the video to the state licensing board, to Adrienne, to the FBI. I'd lose everything. My license, my career, Adrienne, the kids. I felt the anger rise, then flatten into something colder. Understanding. Wayne was not a thief. He was a hostage. How long have you been his informant? I asked. Wayne looked up, his eyes bloodshot. 2 years. Since the debt. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. 2 years. Every move I had made since Eleanor's death, every meeting with Vernon, every decision to protect my assets, Wayne had reported it all to Brent. My son had been feeding intelligence to my daughter's accomplice for 24 months. Not out of malice, but out of terror. My son wasn't a thief. He was a hostage who'd been feeding intelligence to my daughter's accomplice for 24 months. Does Russell know? I asked. Wayne shook his head. No one knows. Just you. And Brent. I reached across the table and gripped his shoulder. He flinched, then exhaled, his whole body sagging under the weight of confession. We'll fix this, I said. But you need to tell me everything, every detail, every conversation. Wayne nodded, wiped his face with his sleeve, and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his files, his hands still shaking, until he found what he was looking for. A video file. The date stamp read March 2022, 2 years prior. 9 months before Eleanor's death. Dad, there's more, Wayne said quietly. Brent didn't just record me taking the cash. He recorded who told him about your hidden assets in the first place. He hit play. Colleen's voice filled the kitchen. The video from March 2022 lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Colleen's voice, clear and methodical, walking Brent through Wayne's gambling vulnerability. The exact dollar amounts in my trust accounts, the structure of Eleanor's estate, and the timeline for when I would be most susceptible to a conservatorship claim. She had planned everything 9 months before Eleanor died. By the time the video ended, Wayne was shaking so hard he could barely hold the phone. I called Russell. He called the FBI. And by Thursday morning at 8:47 a.m., the interview room door locked behind us. The FBI interview room was windowless, fluorescent lit, with a steel table bolted to the floor and a camera mounted in the corner. Agent Sarah Kellerman sat across from Wayne, her recorder running, her pen moving in steady strokes across a legal pad. She was mid-40s, sharp-eyed with the kind of calm that comes from hearing confessions for 20 years. I sat in the corner, silent, while Wayne gave his statement. 4 hours. Every detail of the Ponzi scheme, every conspirator, every blackmail method, every text message Brent had sent him over 2 years. The $180,000 gambling debt. The video of him taking cash at a Starbucks that made him look complicit. The threats to send it to the state licensing board, to Adrian, to the FBI if he did not report my every move. Agent Kellerman did not interrupt. She let Wayne talk, nodding occasionally, her expression neutral. When he finally stopped, his voice hoarse, she slid a document across the table. The gambling debt, the $180,000, we're waiving prosecution in exchange for full cooperation, she said. You testify against Brent Townsend and provide all communications. We protect you. But Wayne, if you warn him, if you slip once the deal evaporates. Wayne stared at the paper. He has 47 victims, 90-year-old widows. I helped him do that. I need this on record. It is, Kellerman said. She tapped the recorder. All of it. Wayne picked up the pen. His hand hovered over the signature line for a long moment. Then he signed. 4 hours of confession, and it took 6 seconds to become a federal witness against his brother-in-law. Kellerman stood, collected the document, and paused at the door. Raid set for May 16th. 3 weeks. You go home, act normal, say nothing. Not to your wife, not to your colleagues. Can you do that? Wayne nodded. Good. She glanced at me, then back at Wayne. Your father's a patient man, Mr. Mercer. Most victims want blood yesterday. He waited 2 years to get this right. Don't waste it. She left. Wayne sat there staring at the empty chair across from him, and I realized he was not just afraid of Brent anymore. He was afraid of what he had become. I drove him home. He did not speak the entire ride. The next evening, Friday, Wayne called me at 7:15 p.m. His voice was strange, tight, like he was trying to hold something in. Dad, I need to come over. Now. There's something you need to hear. He arrived 20 minutes later, still in his work clothes, pressed shirt slacks, no tie. He sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where he had confessed 2 days prior, and told me what had happened. I was at a networking event tonight, he said. Corporate thing, clients and vendors. My boss was there. Richard Ashford, the CEO. We were talking, and he asked about my family. I mentioned you said you were retired, used to run an engineering firm. I waited. He stopped mid-sentence. Wayne continued. Asked your name. I said Clifford Henderson. And Dad, his whole face changed. Wayne pulled out his phone, opened his notes app, and read verbatim. Henderson Waite, not related to Henderson Engineering Group. Your father founded that. I nodded, and he laughed, said, hell. I contracted your dad for Mayo Clinic expansion in '99. Charged us $12 million, delivered $8.5 million ahead of schedule. Called him sir for 15 years. How's the old man? I felt something shift in my chest. The Mayo Project. I had not thought about it in years. Wayne's voice cracked. The Mayo Clinic. $12 million. He never told us. Dad, I didn't even know you did work for them. Ashford called you a legend. He said it was the biggest structural retrofit in Rochester history. I said nothing. What was there to say? That I had deliberately kept my professional life separate from my family. That I had not wanted my children to know how much I had built, how much I had earned, because I wanted them to build their own lives, without the weight of my legacy crushing them. I sat in that event for another hour, Wayne said quietly. Shaking hands, making small talk, pretending I knew who my father was. Then I drove home and called Adrienne. He pulled out his phone again, this time opening his recent calls. Adrienne's name at the top, duration 11 minutes. I told her what Ashford said. Told her we'd been wrong about you, that you weren't just some retired engineer puttering around in a paid-off house. You were... He stopped, swallowed hard. I said, we've been wrong about Dad. Completely wrong. How do you reconcile a father you thought you knew with a man who delivered $8.5 million under budget and never mentioned it once? Wayne set the phone down. She was quiet for 7 seconds. I counted. Then she said, he looked up at me, his expression raw. Wayne, I need to tell you something. Last year when I reviewed your father's portfolio for estate planning, he refused. Now I know why. The Henderson Engineering Trust isn't $80 million. It's $127 million. Your father's been hiding more than we thought. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Wayne stared at me, waiting for an explanation I was not ready to give. 127, he repeated. 47 million more than we thought. What else haven't you told us? I did not answer Wayne's question that night. There were things he was not ready to understand. Choices I had made years before Eleanor's death that I could not explain without unraveling the entire timeline. So I told him I would answer everything when the time was right. And he left my house frustrated, but no longer angry. 2 days later, on Monday morning, Denise called me at 11:22 a.m. to tell me Colleen had just tried to rob me in broad daylight. Colleen walked into First National Bank at 11:03 a.m. Monday with a notarized power of attorney she had spent 8 hours perfecting the week before. Denise recognized her immediately, the same woman who had impersonated my voice on a recorded wire transfer 3 weeks earlier. But Denise said nothing. She smiled, greeted her professionally, and waited. I need to access box 2847 for Clifford Garrett, Colleen said, sliding a manila folder across the desk. I have his power of attorney here, notarized last week. Just need to retrieve some documents for his estate planning. Denise opened the folder. Inside was a 2-page POA document, signed with my name in handwriting, that looked disturbingly close to my own, dated April 22nd. The notary seal at the bottom was real. Raised ink embossed stamp signature of a licensed notary public named Andrea Frost. I checked later. Andrea Frost was legitimate, licensed in Monroe County since 2019. Colleen had paid her $500 cash to notarize a forged document without verifying my identity or presence. The notary had authenticated fraud for the price of a weekend grocery bill. Of course, Ms. Mercer, Denise said. She pulled up the safe deposit box records on her computer, her fingers moving slowly across the keyboard. Let me pull up the signature card and access log. One moment. Colleen leaned against the counter, relaxed, confident. Take your time. I know the vault protocols can be particular. She had no idea she was already caught. Denise had flagged her profile the moment she walked in. Every word, every gesture was being recorded on the bank's surveillance system. But Denise worked in silence, methodical, letting Colleen believe she was succeeding. The safe deposit box, number 2847, contained $15 million in stock certificates, the original Henderson engineering patents, and deeds to 4 commercial properties in Rochester that I had purchased in the early 2000s. Colleen knew about them. She had found the inventory list somehow, probably in Eleanor's files, and this was her endgame. If she could access that box, she could liquidate everything before the FBI raid, disappear the assets, and leave me with nothing but litigation. Before I tell you what Denise found in that computer system, are you still with me? Comment A if you'd block her immediately, or B if you'd let her try and add one short reason. Please note, what follows includes some recreated details for storytelling purposes. If that's not for you, feel free to stop here. Denise scrolled through the access log, her expression neutral. Then she looked up. Ma'am, this box requires dual signature, yours, and Mr. Vernon Whitfield, his attorney of record. Bank policy for high-value asset boxes. I'll need to verify both signatures and government-issued ID for each authorized party before vault access. Colleen's face changed. The confidence drained out of her in 2 seconds flat. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Oh, no need then. I'll coordinate with Vernon and come back. She did not wait for Denise to respond. She grabbed the folder, turned, and walked toward the exit with the kind of speed that pretends not to be fleeing. Bank security works in silence. No alarms, no confrontation, just procedures that say no. She left her coffee on the counter, half full, still steaming. That's how fast panic moves. Denise waited until Colleen's car pulled out of the parking lot. Then she logged the attempt. Timestamp 11:03 a.m. Presented identification: Arizona driver's license, Colleen Marie Mercer. POA document number 2024-04-22-AZF-447. Denial reason: missing co-signer, dual signature requirement not met. She archived the CCTV footage, 3 camera angles, full audio, 14 minutes of material. Then she called Vernon. She tried, Denise said. Forged POA solo attempt, panicked when I mentioned your name. We have it all on camera. Full compliance log. You'll want this for the file. Vernon thanked her, hung up, and opened his file cabinet. He pulled the folder labeled Garrett Clifford Safe Deposit Authorization, flipped to the signature page, and stared at the date. May 12, 2022, 2 years prior, 13 months before Eleanor's death. The dual signature requirement was not part of Project Tulip. I had established it long before Russell coined that name, long before I had involved Vernon in any defense strategy, long before Colleen had made her first move. I had seen this coming 2 years ago, and I had quietly locked every door she might try to open. At the bottom of the authorization form in my handwriting was a note Vernon had never asked me about. He read it now for the first time since filing the document. If Colleen attempts solo access, it means she found the stock certificates. Activate Phase 2. Vernon stared at the page. He had been my attorney for 19 years. He had drafted my will, restructured my trust, represented me in 3 corporate disputes and 1 zoning appeal. He thought he knew every strategy I had ever deployed. He had never asked what Phase 2 was. He picked up the phone and dialed my number. I answered on the second ring. Latiferdis, he said quietly. We need to talk about May 2022. And I need to know what Phase 2 means. I had been waiting for this call for 23 months. I told Vernon about Phase 2. Not everything there were pieces he did not need yet. but enough to understand that the safe deposit box was never the target. It was the tripwire. Colleen's attempt to access it meant she had found the asset inventory, which meant she was ready to escalate beyond fraud into outright theft. Phase 2 was containment. Freeze every account she might know about, transfer the commercial property deeds into an LLC she could not trace, and wait for her next move. Vernon listened without interrupting, then asked how long I had been planning this. I told him the truth. 2 years. Since the moment I realized my daughter was capable of stealing from a 90-year-old widow, I knew she was capable of stealing from me. That conversation happened Monday evening. By Sunday afternoon, I was sitting in my backyard with my granddaughter pretending the world was not on fire. Clover showed up at 2 p.m. Sunday, wearing a purple sweater with daisies, carrying a drawing book nearly as big as she was. She was 8 years old, Wayne and Adrian's younger daughter, with dark curls pulled into a ponytail and a gap where her front tooth used to be. Wayne walked her up the driveway, waved at me from a distance, and retreated to his car. He did not come to the door anymore. I think he was afraid of what I might say. Clover ran across the yard and climbed into the chair next to mine at the patio table under the oak tree. Scout followed her tail wagging and settled at her feet. She opened the drawing book to a page covered in crayon stick figures. "Why, Grandpa, look. We had to draw a family tree for school. Teacher said to put the oldest person in the middle and branch out from there." She turned the book toward me. In the center of the page was a tall figure labeled Grandpa in purple crayon. To the left was Daddy, slightly shorter. To the right was Mommy, same height as Daddy. At the bottom was a small figure with curly hair labeled Me, and off to the side in brown crayon was a dog labeled Scout. I studied the page. 5 figures total. No one else. "This is beautiful, sweetheart," I said. "You drew Scout. I ran out of people," she said matter-of-factly. "There was extra space on the page, so I drew Scout. He counts, right?" "Scout absolutely counts." She smiled, relieved, and flipped to the next page. More drawings. A house. A tree. A sun with a face. The kind of art that belongs on refrigerators and in memory boxes. But I kept thinking about the family tree. 4 people and a dog. Wayne had not told her to draw it that way. She had done it herself instinctively, because in her 8-year-old understanding of the world, her family was the 4 people in her house and the dog who lived at Grandpa's. She did not know about Colleen or Brent or the Ponzi scheme or the FBI or the trial that was 3 weeks away. She did not know her father had testified against her aunt, or that her aunt had tried to steal from me, or that her grandfather was about to drag the entire family into open court. An 8-year-old's family tree has 4 names and a dog. That's not poverty. That's precision. Clover leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Grandpa, Daddy said you're not feeling well, but you seem fine to me. Are you sick?" I looked at her at the worry in her eyes that she was trying to hide, and I felt something crack in my chest. "Adults say complicated things sometimes, sweetheart. I'm very fine. Scout and I are both very fine. Promise." "I promise." She nodded satisfied and went back to her drawings. We sat there for an hour. She showed me every page. I asked questions. She explained each one in the kind of detail only children can muster: why the sun was smiling, why the tree had exactly 7 branches, why the house had a red door instead of blue. Scout dozed at her feet, occasionally opening one eye to check that she was still there. When Wayne's car horn honked from the driveway, Clover closed her drawing book and stood. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a purple crayon worn down to a stub. "Next time we can draw together," she said. "Will you promise?" She handed me the crayon like it was a contract. In her world, promises were currency that never devalued. I took it, felt the waxy smoothness under my thumb, and something about the color stopped me cold. Purple. The exact shade Eleanor had used to mark urgent items in her planning folders. I had a box of them in the study, her handwriting still visible on documents I could not bring myself to shred. Purple crayon, purple pen, purple highlighter, her system for separating what mattered from what could wait. Clover was still looking at me, waiting. "I promise," I said. She grinned, the gap in her teeth visible, and ran toward the driveway. Wayne was standing by the car, holding the door open. She climbed into the back seat, waved at me through the window, and buckled herself in. Wayne did not get in the car. He waited until Clover was settled, then walked back across the yard. Stopped 5 feet from the patio table. His face was tight, strained. "Dad, she doesn't know what's happening," he said quietly. "Jessica asked me yesterday if you hate us now. I told her no, but I don't know what to tell them when this goes to trial. What do I say when their grandfather testifies against their aunt?" I looked at him. At the exhaustion in his face, the fear in his eyes, the weight of a man trying to protect his children from a war he had helped start. I wanted to tell him it would be okay, that the girls would understand, that justice and family could coexist without destroying each other. But I had no answer. Wayne nodded, as if my silence confirmed what he already knew, and walked back to his car. I watched them drive away, Clover's hand waving from the back window until they turned the corner and disappeared. I looked down at the purple crayon in my hand. Eleanor's color. Clover's promise. The moral test I had not seen coming. If I lost this, if I won the case and lost the girl who drew Scout into her family tree because there was extra space on the page, what exactly would I have won? I spent 3 days thinking about Clover's question. What would I tell her when this was over? How would I explain that her grandfather had destroyed her aunt to protect money she did not know existed? I had no answer on Sunday. I had no answer on Monday. By Wednesday, I stopped looking for one. Some questions do not have answers that fit in crayon drawings. Some choices break families no matter how carefully you make them. Colleen brought the burgundy folder at 4 p.m. Wednesday, the one she had been building toward for 92 days, and I had been waiting for just as long. She knocked twice, let herself in with the key I had never asked her to return, and found me at the kitchen table. Scout was lying at my feet. The afternoon light came through the window at an angle that made the room feel smaller than it was. She smiled when she saw me, the kind of smile that pretends concern but cannot quite hide triumph. "Dad, hi. I brought some final paperwork for you to sign. Just routine stuff, insurance forms, HIPAA authorizations, Medicare updates. Vernon said you needed these filed by Friday, so I thought I'd save you the trip." She set the burgundy folder on the table and opened it to the first page. A document with my name at the top lines, highlighted in yellow where my signature was required. She pulled a Mont Blanc pen from her purse, heavy black lacquer, the kind of pen designed for signatures that matter, and set it beside the folder. "Sign here, 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 and here," she said, pointing to each line. "I'll handle everything else. You don't need to worry about any of it." I picked up the pen. My hand trembled as I brought it to the first line. The tremor was real this time. Not because I was afraid, because I was about to end my daughter's life as she knew it. And some part of me, some small, irrational part, still wanted to give her one last chance to stop. She did not stop. This is for my health. I asked, my voice slow and uncertain. "You're sure?" "Absolutely," Colleen said. Her voice was warm, patient, the tone you use with children who ask the same question twice. "Just protecting you, Dad. That's all this is." I signed. Slowly, carefully, each letter of my name formed with the deliberate effort of a man whose fine motor control was failing. 4 signatures total. Colleen watched each one, her smile widening with every stroke of the pen. She did not read the documents. She did not need to. She knew what they were. Emergency conservatorship petition forms pre-signed by the ward, acknowledging cognitive decline and requesting court-appointed guardianship. The last piece she needed to file in court on May 10th, 2 days from now. Once filed, I would be legally incompetent, my assets frozen, my decisions void, my life placed in her hands. A Mont Blanc pen is designed for signatures that matter. She handed me the instrument of my own imprisonment. I signed my freedom instead. I set the pen down, removed my glasses, folded them slowly, deliberately, and placed them on the table. Then I looked at her. My eyes were clear. My hand was steady. My voice when I spoke had no tremor. Colleen, I've been clear-headed every moment of 92 days. She blinked. What? Every fake memory lapse was for you. Every confused question, every misplaced object, every time I called you by the wrong name, it was performance. Recorded. Audio-video time-stamped, with my attorney watching via FaceTime from the next room. I gestured toward the living room. Vernon stepped into the doorway holding his phone up so she could see the active FaceTime call. Russell appeared behind him, a federal recording device in his hand, red light blinking. Colleen's face went white. Dr. Barton. I continued, my voice calm, controlled. Under ethics investigation for 6 weeks. Loses his medical license Friday. The second opinion neurologist you hired, Dr. Harrison, he reported your solicitation attempt to the state medical board the same day you contacted him. We have his statement. I stood. Scout stood with me, alert, watching Colleen the way he watched strangers who came too close to the property line. Your husband's Ponzi scheme. The FBI opened Project Tulip 8 months ago, September 2023. We've been walking him into a trap for half a year. Today you walked into yours. Colleen grabbed the edge of the table. Her knuckles went white. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The conservatorship petition you just made me sign. I picked up the folder, held it toward her. Invalid. Signed under false pretenses, with the ward demonstrating full competence immediately after execution. Vernon will file it with the court as evidence of fraud, not as a petition. It's Exhibit 12 in the criminal case. She reached for her wineglass. I had not noticed her pour it, and her hand shook so badly the glass slipped from her fingers. The wineglass hit the floor. Red liquid. White tile. Scout barked once. My daughter said nothing. You stole from 47 people, I said quietly. 90-year-old widows, your son's college fund, my dead wife's memory. And you thought I would let you steal my autonomy because I loved you too much to fight back. I walked to the door and opened it. The evening air was cool, carrying the smell of fresh-cut grass from the neighbor's yard. Get out of my house, I said. Goodbye, daughter. Colleen stood frozen, the burgundy folder still in her hands, wine pooling around her shoes. She opened her mouth twice, closed it. Finally, she whispered, Brent doesn't know. He'll kill me if he finds out I failed. Dad, please. Vernon stepped into the doorway, holding his phone toward her. Too late. Agent Kellerman just texted. They moved the raid to tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Kellerman traced the cloud account within 4 hours. 2 users had accessed Aria's upload, Colleen on March 7th, Brent on March 10th. Both had downloaded the full Tulip folder, read every file, and done nothing with the information. Russell theorized they were too deep in their own plan to realize they had been compromised. By the time they understood what they were looking at, the raid was already in motion. The security breach turned out to be evidence of their arrogance, not their intelligence. By Friday evening, I was too tired to think about conspiracies anymore. I was sitting in my backyard watching the sunset when Silas arrived. Silas walked into my backyard at 7 p.m. Friday, carrying a USB drive, and 4 years of distance neither of us knew how to cross. He was 22 now, tall and thin in the way nursing students get when they spend 16-hour shifts on their feet and forget to eat. His hair was longer than I remembered, pulled back in a small knot at the base of his neck. He wore scrubs, green creased from a long shift, and sneakers that had seen better days. Scout stood when he entered, tail wagging cautiously, waiting for permission. "Grandpa," Silas said. He stopped 3 feet from the patio table like there was an invisible line he was not sure he was allowed to cross. "Silas." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Sit." He sat. Set the USB drive on the table between us. It was small, black, ordinary, the kind you buy at any electronics store for $10. But the way he placed it carefully, deliberately, like it carried weight beyond its physical mass, told me it was not ordinary at all. "I recorded them," he said quietly. "My mom and her husband. 3 months of conversations, family dinners, and the car phone calls I was present for. All from my phone. It's legal in Minnesota as participant recording. I gave it to your lawyer 3 months ago." I stared at the drive. 3 months. February. 2 months before the Easter confrontation. 1 month before I had started performing memory lapses for Colleen's benefit. "Vernon has had this since February." "Oh, tuptum," Silas nodded. "I was afraid to tell you. Didn't know if you were strong enough to know I was spying on my own mother for you. I see now you always were strong enough. You were just waiting for the right moment." I picked up the drive, felt the smooth plastic under my thumb. 3 months. You've been carrying this alone since February." "Yeah." His voice cracked slightly. "Every Sunday dinner, every car ride to the grocery store, every phone call where she thought I wasn't listening. I recorded it all. She'd talk to Brent about you like you were a problem to solve. Like you were an obstacle instead of a person. A 22-year-old shouldn't have to choose between his mother and his moral compass. But some families make children grow up too fast." "And why on?" I asked. Silas looked at me and I saw something in his eyes I had not seen in 4 years. Not anger, not fear, just clarity. "Because she was hurting you. Somebody had to stop her. You're the only one who ever treated me like I mattered." I set the drive down. Thought about the last 4 years. Silas at Eleanor's funeral sitting alone in the back row because his mother had not come. Because Brent had convinced her it was not worth the trip. Silas calling me every few months asking how I was doing, never mentioning the family fractures that were already forming. Silas choosing a career in healing, while his mother chose a career in theft. "You recorded your own mother," I said slowly, "for 3 months. To protect me. Silas, you're 22 years old. You shouldn't have had to make that choice." His eyes filled. He did not wipe the tears away. Just let them fall silent the way people cry when they have been holding something in for too long. "She was supposed to be better than this," he whispered. I kept waiting for her to stop, to realize what she was doing was wrong, but she just kept going. And I realized if I didn't do something, nobody would. I stood, walked around the table, and for the first time in 4 years, since the day we buried Eleanor and his mother chose not to show, I hugged my grandson. I hadn't hugged my grandson in 4 years. His shoulders shook. Scout pressed against both our legs. He was taller than me now. When had that happened? When had this boy who used to climb on my lap to ask about the stars become a man who recorded his mother's crimes to save his grandfather? "You're a nurse, son," I whispered into his shoulder. "You heal people. That's who you are. Don't carry this forever. You did the right thing, but don't let it define you." He nodded against my chest, his breathing uneven, his hands gripping the back of my shirt, like he was afraid to let go. We stood there for a long time. The sunset faded into dusk. Scout lay down at our feet. The world kept turning, but for those few minutes, it felt like we were the only 2 people who mattered. When Silas finally pulled back, he wiped his face with his sleeve and managed a weak smile. "Thanks, Grandpa." "Thank you," I said. For being brave when nobody asked you to be. He picked up his keys from the table, started toward the gate, then stopped. Turned back. Grandpa, there's something on those recordings you need to hear before trial. February 8th, timestamp 1847. My mom tells Brent she knows about the nursing home embezzlement. Margaret Sinclair wasn't the first victim. There were 6 others before the Ponzi even started. I felt something cold settle in my chest. 6 others. Before Margaret. Before the Ponzi scheme had even launched. Vernon will need to hear this tonight, I said. Silas nodded. I know. That's why I came. Vernon and Russell listened to the February 8th recording that night. 6 nursing home residents embezzled over 18 months before the Ponzi scheme even launched. Silas's mother knew. She had helped Brent cover the paper trail, restructure the accounts, and convince the facilities that billing discrepancies were clerical errors. The recording added conspiracy charges to her file. By Sunday morning, the case had expanded beyond anything we had imagined. The SEC announcement hit local news at 6 a.m. Sunday. Rochester wealth advisor under investigation for alleged $4 million Ponzi scheme affecting 47 victims. I was in my kitchen when my phone rang. Russell's voice clipped and urgent. It's public. Turn on Channel 8. I switched on the television. The news anchor sat behind her desk, expression grave, graphic over her shoulder, showing Brent's professional headshot next to the words, SEC investigation. The SEC has filed a formal complaint against Brent Townsend, 42 of Rochester, alleging a $4 million Ponzi scheme targeting primarily senior citizens, she said. 47 victims have been identified. Townsend's assets have been frozen pending investigation. Federal charges may follow. I sat down at the table, watched the screen. They showed the office building where Brent ran his advisory firm, showed file footage of elderly residents at Meadowbrook, faces blurred for privacy, showed Agent Kellerman standing outside the FBI field office declining to comment. Russell's voice came through the phone. His accounts locked at 5:47 a.m., Colleen's 2 joint account liability. Everything frozen. He tried to wire $340,000 to a Cayman account at 6:15. Treasury blocked it. He knows he's done. Colleen's accounts frozen. The daughter who had spent 92 days trying to seize control of my wealth now had 0 access to her own. Justice had a sense of irony I had not anticipated. 47 families just saw justice start, I said quietly. That's what matters. I spent Sunday and Monday watching the news coverage expand. By Monday evening, 3 local papers had run front-page stories. Margaret Sinclair's daughter gave an interview. Faye declined comment but sent me a text. Thank you. Tuesday morning, Scout would not eat. He stood by his bowl, stared at it, then walked away. When I called him, he came slowly, his tail low, his gait unsteady. I knelt beside him, ran my hand along his side. He whimpered. By 7:30 a.m., he was vomiting. By 8 a.m., I had him in the truck heading to Rochester Emergency Veterinary Clinic. Dr. Jennifer Moss met me in the exam room. She was late 30s, calm and methodical, with the kind of steady hands that come from years of emergency medicine. She examined Scout, while I stood against the wall, useless, watching my dog tremble on the steel table. Mr. Garrett, it's antifreeze poisoning ethylene glycol, she said after running blood work. He ingested it sometime in the last 12 to 18 hours. We're administering fomepizole and starting dialysis immediately. He's young and strong. We caught it early enough. He'll survive, but recovery will take weeks. Scout's water bowl, antifreeze. Someone tried to murder my dog to hurt me. His outdoor water bowl. I said, my voice hollow. Someone put it in his water, Dr. Moss nodded. That would be consistent with the exposure pattern. I'm legally required to report suspected animal cruelty to authorities. I'll file that today. I stayed until they moved Scout to the ICU until his eyes closed under sedation, until I could not do anything more for him. Then I drove home, called Russell, and told him what had happened. He arrived at my house 2 hours later with a man in coveralls. "This is Wayne Hollister," Russell said. "Certified mechanic. He's checking your truck." Wayne Hollister was mid-50s, grease-stained hands, the kind of man who had spent his life under hoods and knew engines the way surgeons know anatomy. He walked to my F-150, dropped a creeper on the driveway, and slid underneath. 5 minutes later, he rolled out. His face was grim. "Mr. Garrett, your brake lines didn't wear through. They were cut. Clean slice, both front lines. Professional job. You'd have lost braking at the first hard stop. Somebody tried to kill you." Russell was already pulling up security footage on his laptop at my kitchen table. I stood behind him, watching the grainy infrared image of my backyard at 3 a.m. Sunday morning. A figure approached from the side yard. Dark clothing, baseball cap pulled low. He walked to Scout's water bowl, poured something from a bottle, stirred it with his finger. Then he moved to the truck, dropped to the ground, and crawled underneath. 6 minutes. When he emerged, he was gone. Russell paused. The footage zoomed in on the face. Marcus Dillon, the same hired thug who had tested my surveillance in April. Sunday, 3 a.m. Russell said quietly. 2 days after the SEC announcement. Antifreeze first, then under the truck for 6 minutes. Brent sent him. "This is attempted murder, federal assault. Arrest warrant accelerates to Friday morning." Backum to. How do you measure the distance between fraud and murder? 2 days and a brake line. I looked at the frozen image on the screen. At the man who had poisoned my dog and sabotaged my truck on orders from my daughter's husband. At the escalation from theft to violence, from greed to homicide. "Pack an overnight bag," Russell said, standing. "You and Scout stay at my cabin tonight. Bring your medication and the tulip files. We're not taking chances." I packed. Loaded the bag into Russell's truck. Picked up Scout from the vet at 4:30 p.m., weak sedated, wrapped in a blanket Dr. Moss provided. He lay in the back seat, his breathing shallow, his eyes half closed. As we pulled out of my driveway, my phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. "Your dog was just a warning. Drop the case or next time it's your granddaughter's." B. I stared at the screen. Clover. Jessica. 8 and 10 years old. Drawing family trees and asking about college. Russell saw my face. "What is it?" I showed him the screen. Russell called Agent Kellerman the moment he saw the text. She ordered immediate protective surveillance on Wayne's family and accelerated Brent's arrest warrant to Friday morning. We drove to Russell's cabin in silence. Scout wrapped in blankets in the back seat, the threat against my granddaughters sitting heavy in the air between us. The SWAT team kicked down my front door at 3:07 a.m. Wednesday, 20 minutes after I had left for Russell's cabin with a poisoned dog and a death threat on my phone. Russell's phone woke me at 3:45 a.m. I answered, disoriented Scout stirring beside me on the cabin floor. "Your house just got swatted," Russell said. His voice was tight controlled. SWAT team full tactical. Anonymous 911 call, claiming Vincent Henderson at 412. Maple had explosives strapped to his grandchildren and was threatening to detonate. "You were gone 20 minutes. Send that threat saved your life. You left before he could time it right." I sat up. Vincent Henderson. My middle name. The name on my engineering license, the one Eleanor had called me when she was annoyed. The caller knew details only family would know. Doris saw the whole thing. Russell continued. Doris Keller, my neighbor at 410 Maple, a retired librarian who had lived next door for 30 years. She gave a statement to the FBI. Empty house. No hostages, no explosives. SWAT cleared it in 12 minutes. By dawn, the FBI had traced the burner phone. Purchased cash at a Marathon gas station on Civic Center Drive, 2 blocks from Brent's apartment 5 days ago. Partial CCTV footage showed a figure matching Brent's build. Federal domestic terrorism statute applied. The swatting attack intended to terrorize or kill me had instead handed Agent Kellerman another charge. He called SWAT on an empty house to scare me, I said quietly. Instead, he gave you terrorism charges. Russell's voice was grim. He's escalating. Arrest moves to Friday, 6 a.m. Warrant signed. I spent Wednesday and most of Thursday at the cabin monitoring news coverage, checking on Scout's recovery, waiting for the arrest I knew was coming. Thursday afternoon at 4:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Text message. Unknown number. Dad, I did it. I testified. I'll call when ready to see you. Could be months. Thank you for letting me fall. Ronan. I stared at the screen. Ronan, my youngest son. 34 years old, a carpenter with hands scarred from years of rough work and rougher living. 8 months sober in AA after a decade of drinking that had cost him 2 jobs, 1 marriage, and most of his 20s. I had cut him off financially 8 months ago, when he showed up drunk at Eleanor's grave on the anniversary of her death, demanding money for rent he claimed he could not pay. Russell saw my face. What is it? I handed him the phone. He read the text, then looked up. He testified to who? SEC, I assume. I called Vernon. He confirmed it within 10 minutes. Ronan had walked into the SEC office in Minneapolis Thursday at 2 p.m. and given a voluntary statement. 18 months ago, Ronan had been drunk. Brent had asked him to sign 4 documents, said it was LLC paperwork, just helping him out with a new venture. Ronan signed without reading. Last week, his AA sponsor made him look up what he had done. They were client agreements for Brent's Ponzi fund. Ronan's name had recruited 3 people friends from his construction crew, who lost $87,000 total. He walked into federal custody voluntarily to undo what he had done drunk. My youngest son, 8 months sober, walked into federal custody voluntarily to undo what he did drunk. That's not weakness. That's courage I didn't teach him. I sat on the cabin porch, Scout's head resting on my knee, and cried for the first time since Eleanor's funeral. Not from grief, from something I did not have words for. Pride, maybe, or relief that one of my children had found a way back to integrity. Friday morning at 6:02 a.m., the FBI executed simultaneous knock-and-announce raids at 3 locations. Brent's apartment, Colleen's house, a storage unit Brent had rented under his mother's maiden name. I watched it on the news from Russell's cabin. Agent Kellerman at Brent's door, warrant in hand, tactical team behind her. The door opened, Brent in pajamas, barefoot, blinking against the porch light. Kellerman's voice, calm and professional, reading the charges. Brent Townsend, you're under arrest for securities fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, attempted assault of a federal witness accessory to domestic terrorism via swatting and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Colleen's arrest happened simultaneously. Different crew, same warrant structure. She came out in a robe, hair uncombed, hands cuffed behind her back. The cameras caught everything. She screamed at them, at the agents, at the cameras, and then, voice raw and breaking, she screamed at me. My dad did this. My father set us up. He faked dementia for 3 months. This is elder abuse. He's the criminal. Colleen screamed my name on live television. Called me a criminal. My daughter. Our daughter. I turned off the TV. Scout rested his head on my lap, his eyes half closed, still weak from the poisoning, but alive. I stroked his ears, felt the softness of his fur, the warmth of his breathing. I told her mother I'd take care of them. I whispered to the empty cabin. I didn't say how. Russell's phone rang at 7:23 a.m. He answered, listened, then handed it to me. Agent Kellerman. Mr. Garrett, we need you in Minneapolis Monday morning at 9 a.m., federal courthouse bail hearing. All 47 victims will be giving impact statements. The judge wants you present as primary complainant. I nodded, then remembered she could not see me. I'll be there. There was a pause. Then Kellerman said, Margaret Sinclair is bringing her daughter, Faye Sinclair. She specifically requested to meet you after the hearing. My chest tightened. Faye, my piano teacher. The woman who had been guiding me through Moonlight Sonata for 5 weeks, knowing the entire time that my daughter had funded the theft from her mother. I'll be there, I said again. I hadn't told anyone Faye was teaching me piano. Now I would have to. The bail hearing on Monday had lasted 4 hours. 47 victim impact statements, Margaret Sinclair in a wheelchair, Faye standing beside her. We spoke for 6 minutes afterward in the courthouse hallway. She told me she had known from the beginning who I was, why I was learning Moonlight Sonata, what my family had done to hers. She said she taught me anyway, because some debts are paid forward, not backward. I did not know what to say to that. So I thanked her and promised to keep practicing. The judge's gavel fell at 10:47 a.m. on May 28th, 8 minutes after Vernon finished presenting 92 days of evidence that I had been perfectly sane the entire time. Judge Rebecca Moreland was mid-50s. Gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. She had listened to Vernon's presentation without interruption for 90 minutes. Video footage of me signing Colleen's conservatorship petition with trembling hands, then removing my glasses and speaking with perfect clarity. Audio recordings of Vernon watching via FaceTime from the next room. 2 independent neurologist evaluations showing perfect cognitive scores. Dr. Glenn Meyer's testimony about Dr. Glenn Barton's solicitation attempt 3 weeks before my performance began. Judge Moreland set down her pen, looked at Vernon, then at the empty defendant's chair, where Colleen would have sat if she had not been in federal custody awaiting trial. Petition denied, she said. Her voice was calm, measured, final. Dr. Glenn Barton's conduct is referred to the State Medical Board for investigation of pre-diagnosis solicitation and conspiracy to commit fraud. Ms. Mercer's petition will be entered into her criminal case as evidence of aggravating fraudulent conduct. She turned to me. Mr. Garrett, for the record, this court finds you of sound, mind-sharp memory and superior discipline in the execution of your legal defense. This proceeding is dismissed. The gavel fell again. Vernon gathered his files. I stood my legs steadier than I expected and walked out of the courtroom a free man in every legal sense of the word. Vernon caught up to me in the hallway. 92 days, he said quietly. You did it. They can't touch you now. I nodded. But the vindication felt hollow. I had won. My daughter had lost. There was no version of this where both of those things felt good. 5 days later, on June 2nd, Colleen showed up at my door. She had been bailed out by someone I never learned who. She was 10 weeks pregnant, her face pale and drawn, standing on my front porch at 3:30 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon. I did not open the door. I spoke to her through the intercom scout sitting at my feet, watching the door, like he knew not to trust what was on the other side. "Oh, Dad, please," she said. Her voice cracked. She was crying. I could hear it through the speaker. "I'm 10 weeks pregnant. Your grandchild. Don't let this baby be born in a homeless shelter. I have nothing. Brent's assets are frozen. Mine too. I can't even afford groceries. Please." I closed my eyes, felt the weight of it settle on my chest. An unborn child. My grandchild. Innocent. Blameless. Caught in the wreckage of choices that had not been theirs. "I'm sorry, Colleen," I said, "but I don't trust you with a single dollar that could become his or her future. Here's what I'll do. My lawyer will set up an irrevocable trust for the child, starting at birth. $2 million. Managed by a third-party trustee. You cannot touch it. You cannot borrow against it. Your child will have everything they need: education, healthcare, housing when they're old enough. You will not. A $2 million trust is a wall between a child and their mother's mistakes. It's also a bridge I'll never cross. There was silence on the other end. Then her voice came back raw and furious. You're not my father anymore. I stopped being your father the day you forged my name, I said quietly. Goodbye, Colleen. I turned off the intercom. She stood on the porch for another 3 minutes, then walked back to her car and drove away. I watched her taillights disappear down the street and felt nothing except the faint hope that the child she was carrying would grow up better than she had. 6 days later, on June 8th, Aria showed up. She was wearing AirPods, a hoodie-ripped jeans. 15 years old and already carrying herself like someone who had learned to demand without asking. She knocked twice, waited, then looked up at the security camera and waved. I opened the door but did not invite her in. Grandpa, Mom said to ask you for a college fund, she said. No greeting, no apology. Just the ask. Dad might go to jail. We have nothing. You recorded me, I said. 3 devices, 5 months of surveillance. You photographed documents from your grandmother's jewelry box while I was in the garden. You were 15 years old, Aria. Her face flushed. She looked down, then back up, defiant. Mom said it was to help you, that you were confused and needed documentation, and you believed her. I was trying to help. Chiki, here's my offer, I said. Move in with Uncle Wayne for 1 year. Weekly therapy with a counselor of your choice. 200 hours of community service at a food bank or homeless shelter. Straight A's. End of that year. If you're still the girl you want to be, not the girl your mother made you, we'll talk about college. Not before. She stared at me. That's blackmail. No, I said. That's a second chance. You're 15. You can still choose who you become. But you have to choose it. Not your mother. You. She pulled out her phone, typed something, hit send. Then she looked back at me, eyes cold. You're a psycho, she said. She turned and walked down the driveway. I watched her on the security monitor as she reached the sidewalk, pulled out her phone again, and mouthed the words, fucking psycho, while texting. The message went to Colleen. I saw the whole thing. She called me a psycho. 15 years old, AirPods on, walking away from a second chance. Her choice. I shrugged and went back inside. Vernon called at 6 p.m. Clifford, Colleen's lawyer, just filed a motion for supervised visitation with Clover and Jessica, using the $2 million trust as proof you acknowledge family ties and parental standing. She's weaponizing your protection of her unborn child to access Wayne's daughters. I closed my eyes. Call Wayne, I said. He needs to know tonight. Wayne's lawyer filed opposition to the supervised visitation motion within 48 hours. The judge scheduled a hearing for July, but Wayne told me privately he would never allow Colleen near his daughter's, court order or not. He would move out of state if necessary. I believed him. Clover arrived at 2 p.m. Sunday with an A3 drawing hidden behind her back and a smile that told me she had kept her promise. She was wearing overalls and sneakers with glitter laces, her hair in 2 braids, that Adrian must have spent 20 minutes perfecting. Scout greeted her at the gate, tail wagging, and she knelt to scratch behind his ears before following me to the patio table in the backyard. Grandpa, I finished it, she said, barely able to contain herself. She pulled the drawing from behind her back and spread it on the table between us. Teacher said to draw my family. I did. The paper was covered in crayon. Bright colors, careful lines, the kind of deliberate artistry that comes from a child who takes assignments seriously. In the center of the page was a tall figure labeled Grandpa in purple crayon. To the left, two figures holding hands, Daddy and Mommy. To the right, a smaller figure with curly hair holding Grandpa's hand, me. Below them, two more figures, Uncle Ronan and Cousin Silas. And at the bottom, in brown crayon, Scout. 6 figures total. 7 if you counted the dog. "Sweetheart, this is beautiful," I said. My voice caught slightly. I cleared my throat. "How did you decide who to draw?" Clover sat down, her legs swinging under the chair, not quite reaching the ground. She counted on her fingers. Mine I counted in my head. Who came to my birthday in April? Who sat at Saturday dinner at our house? Who asked if Scout was okay after he got sick? She pointed to each figure on the page. "See, Daddy and Mommy came to my birthday. You came and brought me the art set. Uncle Ronan came and fixed the swing. Cousin Silas came and played hide and seek. Then I drew them." I looked at the drawing, at the people she had included, at the people she had not. No Colleen, no Brent, no Aria, not because Wayne had told her to exclude them, not because I had poisoned her mind with accusations, but because she had applied her own metric, innocent, definitive, and devastatingly clear. Who showed up? Who cared? Who asked if the dog was okay? An 8-year-old drew the verdict I had been building evidence for 13 months to prove. She did it with 3 crayons and a clear heart. This is perfect, Clover," I said quietly. "Can I keep it?" Her eyes lit up. Really. I want to put it on my refrigerator so I can see it every morning." She beamed. I carried the drawing inside, found a magnet shaped like a sunflower that Eleanor had bought years ago, and pinned the paper to the refrigerator door. It looked small against the white surface, but it filled the kitchen with something I had not felt in months. Hope, maybe, or proof that innocence could still see clearly when the adults around it had long since lost the ability. I called Wayne. "Son, want to take a walk with me? There's something I want to show her." We drove downtown at 3:45 p.m. Clover in the back seat, asking questions about every building we passed. Scout beside her, with his head out the window. Wayne drove in silence, glancing at me occasionally, like he was trying to figure out where we were going. I told him to park on 3rd Street. We walked half a block to the corner of 3rd and Broadway, and I stopped in front of the building I had not visited in 4 years. Henderson Engineering Group. 12 stories, granite facade, bronze letters above the entrance, each one 2 feet tall, engraved with the name I had built over 40 years of contracts, blueprints, and deadlines that defined my professional life. Clover looked up at the building, then at me. Grandpa's name, I said. Grandpa's company, Wainiki site, I smiled. Once. Now yours to inherit when you're ready. If you're still the girl who draws families with everyone who matters in them. She tilted her head, processing. What does inherit mean? It means it becomes yours. The building, the company, everything inside it, when you're old enough, when you're ready, if you want it. I'll still be her grandpa, Clover said seriously. I promise. I know you will, sweetheart. Wayne stood behind us, silent, his hand resting on Clover's shoulder. When I glanced at him, I saw tears running down his face. He did not wipe them away. Just stood there, watching his daughter inherit a legacy built by a grandfather she had chosen to include in a crayon drawing because he showed up when it mattered. Eleanor, if you're watching, our granddaughter just inherited a 12-story building by knowing who asked if a dog was okay. We stood there for another 5 minutes, Clover asking questions about what engineers do, whether she could visit the building someday, if Scout could come too. I answered everyone. Then we walked back to the car, Scout trotting beside us, and I let the moment settle into memory where it belonged. As we reached the car, Wayne pulled me aside. His voice was shaking. Dad, I need to tell you something. Adrian ran Clover's name through estate planning software last week. If Clover inherits at 18 and Colleen's baby inherits the $2 million trust, There's a legal mechanism for Colleen to challenge standing as partial guardian to both. She could argue shared inheritance creates shared custody grounds. We need to revisit the trust structure. I looked back at the building. 12 stories, bronze letters, 40 years of work. Suddenly it felt less like a gift and more like a target. "Call Vernon tonight," I said. "We'll fix it." Wayne nodded. Clover climbed into the back seat, humming to herself, oblivious to the legal maneuvering already forming around the inheritance she did not yet understand. I looked up at the sky, at the clouds moving slowly across the late afternoon sun, and whispered to the memory of the woman who had sat beside me through every blueprint, every contract, every late night at the office. "Well, Eleanor, did you see she's going to be okay? We picked the right one." Vernon restructured the trust within a week. Clover's inheritance now sat in an irrevocable dynasty trust that could not be challenged through Colleen's baby's guardianship. The building was safe. The legacy was protected. And by the time Easter 2025 arrived, I had stopped checking over my shoulder for legal threats I could not see coming. I woke at 5 a.m. Easter Sunday 2025 1 year after I had set 15 plates that no one filled and started making deviled eggs for people who would actually show up. Eleanor's recipe: 18 eggs. Paprika, mayo, mustard, relish, a pinch of cayenne she had insisted made the difference between good and memorable. I boiled them in the same pot she had used for 40 years, peeled them at the kitchen sink, while Scout lay on his bed in the corner, older now, but healthy. His breathing steady and calm. The chickens were in the oven by 6. 2 organic birds herb-roasted, nothing like the honey-glazed ham I had made last year. I will never make ham again, I said aloud to Scout. He lifted his head, ears perked. That was Eleanor's dish only when all her children came home. That chapter's closed. The menu change was not about preference. It was about acknowledging that some of Eleanor's traditions had died with the relationships that sustained them. Ham required a full table of blood family. Chicken worked for 12 people I had chosen, and who had chosen me back. Faye arrived at 8, with a basket of tulips, purple and white, the colors Eleanor had planted every spring in the side garden. "Need help in the kitchen, Vincent?" she asked. She was the only one who called me by my middle name, the one Eleanor had used when she was annoyed or affectionate, depending on her tone. "I'd like that," I said. We worked in comfortable silence, Faye chopping celery for stuffing me, finishing the deviled eggs. At one point she looked at me and said, "Last year you ate alone. This year you're feeding 12. That's not recovery, Clifford. That's resurrection." I did not know what to say to that. So I nodded and kept working. By noon the table was full. Vernon and his wife, Claire. Russell and his wife, Patricia. Faye. Floyd Brennan, my 71-year-old neighbor and retired postal worker who had helped me shovel snow 3 times this winter. Doris from next door. Wayne, Adrienne, and Clover. Ronan, 16 months sober, now his hands steady as he passed the rolls. Silas, who had driven up from Minneapolis and brought a pecan pie, and Scout lying under the table at my feet, his nose resting on my shoe. 12 people. None of them shared my blood. All of them had earned their place by showing up when it mattered. Clover held up a deviled egg, examined it like a scientist, and said, "Grandpa, these are the same recipe from last Easter, right? The ones nobody came to eat." "Same recipe," I said. "Different people, better outcome." She bit into it, nodded with approval, and went back to her conversation with Ronan about whether dogs dream in color. No one mentioned Colleen. No one mentioned Brent. No one mentioned Aria. The absence was not a wound. It was a boundary that everyone at the table understood and respected. After dinner, Faye stood and walked to Eleanor's piano. It was 40 years old, the keys slightly yellowed, the wood polished to a soft shine that caught the afternoon light. She looked at me over her shoulder. I nodded. She played Amazing Grace. Not Moonlight Sonata, that was still mine to learn, still 18 months away, if my hands kept practicing. But Amazing Grace, simple and slow, each note deliberate and clear. Scout lifted his head. The room fell silent. Clover stopped mid-sentence. Vernon set down his coffee. Wayne closed his eyes. Amazing Grace on a dead wife's piano played by a woman whose mother my daughter helped rob. That's not irony. That's grace I didn't earn but somehow inherited anyway. When the final note faded, Clover clapped. Then everyone else did too. Faye stood bowed slightly and returned to her seat. No one said anything. There was nothing that needed saying. At 3 o'clock, I sat on the front porch with Silas in the rocking chairs Eleanor and I had bought 30 years ago. Scout lay between us, his breathing slow and even. The tulips Faye had brought were in a vase on the porch table, their petals catching the late afternoon sun. "Grandpa, my sister texted yesterday," Silas said quietly. "First time in a year. She asked if you still make deviled eggs." I looked at the tulips, counted to 15 in my head, then said, "If she's ever ready to learn how to make them, the door's open." "Not before," Silas nodded. "And my mother, sentencing's next month. She'll do 4 years minimum. Her husband 18 years minimum. The baby was born healthy in February. Adrienne got temporary custody." I closed my eyes for 3 seconds, opened them. Good. That baby deserves a mother who knows how to love. Silas placed his hand on mine. We sat there until the sun started to set, saying nothing, the silence between us, the kind that only comes after you have survived something together. Inside, I could hear Clover laughing, Vernon telling a story, the clink of dishes being cleared, the hum of people who had chosen to be here filling a house that had been too quiet for too long. I set 15 plates that first Easter. 12 showed up a year later, none of them shared my blood. I lost 2 children to find 12 people worth cooking for. Some people would say losing 2 children to find 12 is a bad trade. Those people never actually counted who's at their table on Easter. The hardest thing I ever did was stop being an ATM for my own kids. The second hardest was learning that love without a price tag was still love, just not the kind they would ever recognize. The door remains open, not wide, not unguarded, but open. Aria knows where to find the deviled eggs recipe when she's ready to learn it. Colleen's baby will inherit $2 million I will never see spent. And 18 months from now, if my hands still remember, I'll play Moonlight Sonata for the first time. Eleanor will hear it, wherever she is. So will Faye. If that sounds dramatic, well, maybe it is. I've learned to take that word as a compliment. And to you listening to my story, remember this family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who shows up when the table is set. Don't make my mistake of waiting so long to see what was right in front of me. I spent years being an ATM instead of a father confusing money with love. It took losing 2 children to understand that unconditional love doesn't mean accepting unconditional harm. The hardest lesson I learned, sometimes protecting yourself from family is the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved. Here's what Grandpa stories like mine teach us: blood doesn't make you family, showing up does. That's the real family story we need to hear, not who you're related to, but who you can count on. I believe God allowed this pain to teach me the difference between people who love you and people who love what you can give them. Every family story has its lessons. This one taught me that protecting yourself from harm is sometimes the most loving choice you can make. If this grandpa's story resonated with you, please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about choosing family versus accepting family. Share this family story with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss one. Thank you for staying until the very end. I truly appreciate you being here. A final note: while this story contains fictionalized elements for storytelling purposes, the lessons about family, boundaries, and chosen love are real. May you find your own table of people who show up when it matters.